face popular culture deems acceptable and bravely eat and drink whatever they want, whenever they want.
In other news, the nation's single men announce a plan to change their bed sheets by 2019. A woman who left the room crying earlier expects to jump back into the party just like that. And a courtroom artist is clearly infatuated with the bailiff. This 2.5-minute-long session of immersion therapy is finally complete. Your crippling fear of watching video news recaps should no longer be a problem. For more, keep checking theonion.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Hey, it's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. You can join us here. You can bring up whatever you want to talk about. The phones are open, as they always are. Number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
We also are going to be joined shortly by Nobody. I see him pulling up outside as we speak. I don't know if this is his first Friday show back.
Yeah, because he wasn't here last week.
Okay, yeah, because
he missed it.
Yeah, that's right. He started coming back after the New Year, so it'd be great to have him back here in the studio. Of course, phones are open, and you can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We're going to get into the latest attack, not in the United States on cryptocurrency, but in nearby Canada. You've got a story about that, Chris. That's on the way tonight. Plus, here's a surprise. The U.S. federal government has hit its debt limit, or is about to. Apparently on Thursday, they're going to hit the so-called debt limit. And, of course, why they even have a debt limit just, doesn't really make much sense because they just raise it every time they come close to hitting it. So it's never really done any kind of limiting. They're already over $31 trillion, the current debt limit, according to the Department of the Treasury. And welcome, Nobody. Good to have you.
Thank you.
The current debt limit, according to the Department of Treasury letter here issued out earlier today, is $31.381 trillion. And they are going to hit that as soon as next Thursday, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. CNBC reporting here that after that, the Treasury Department will begin, quote, taking certain extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its obligations. What do you think happens if the U.S. government defaults on its obligations?
Costs more money to get credit?
Probably nothing.
Well, they make it sound like it's going to be this big thing, and it may very well be, because it's probably that they can't pay on the Treasury bonds, would be my guess. And if they can't pay on the Treasury bonds, Peakless Mountaineer explained one night a little while back, and he's like really into the whole finance thing, that essentially causes a cascading, just a traumatic situation with like the stock markets, because there's a lot of things that depend on those bonds getting paid on time, basically. Mm-hmm. So that may very well be one of the things that happens. But of course, the small government Republicans will certainly come to the rescue and increase the debt limit.
Usually they just borrow from one of their slush funds.
Well, they get to print it, right? Like, it's just that they can't print more if they hit the debt limit, right? Because when the Federal Reserve prints money, into existence, that's essentially they're buying the government's debt. Right? Aren't they buying the Treasury bonds with that money, as I understand it? If they can't get Japan or China or whoever to buy the Treasury bonds, or average suckers to buy them, then it's the Federal Reserve that does.
That's the most common thing they do. The committee is the Federal Open Market Committee. Yeah, I know. And they usually buy Treasury bonds, although they also are the organization that was buying up all kinds of toxic debt during the housing crunch, for example.
The Treasury is not currently able to estimate how long those emergency actions would allow the U.S. government to pay for its obligations, she said, but, quote, it's unlikely that cash and extraordinary measures will be exhausted before early June. She warned the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, that it is, quote, critical that Congress act in a timely manner to increase or suspend the debt limit. She said failure to meet the government's obligations would cause irreparable harm to the U.S. economy, the livelihoods of all Americans, and global financial stability. If only we could actually see what that shook out as. If it actually ever happened.
Instability would be a beautiful thing.
Well, I mean, it's not as though that it's currently very stable anyway. It's a house of cards.
Yeah, well, I mean, some things are stable. Some things are kept stable by the government. For example, if you're super rich and you lose all your money, they're going to make things stable by giving it back to you.
I love how people use the word stable. It's not really stable. It's more like a predictable downward trend, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not. And it's kind of funny because people say things like Bitcoin are unstable, but it's like. Yeah, but you're kind of missing like some of the value there, and then if you start saying the dollar is stable, like okay, but you're missing that it's on a downward trend. I don't know, the
stable
whole thing,
downward trend.
Yeah,
I like what
right?
you said, the predictable.
Right. It's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if your first derivative is a constant, that's stability, and that's just graphs as a slanted line.
She says, I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. And that's interesting wording, isn't it? Faith, right? The faith of the United States. It's got a lot of similarities to a religion.
Yeah,
we've pointed this out.
Oh, yeah.
We will continue to point this out again and again. I mean, all you have to do is go to your nearest courtroom to see the similarities to a religion. You've got a man in a robe, you've got icons, you've got literal pews, everybody's all quiet, they speak in hushed tones, there's this forced reverence, there's all kinds of, religious sort of rites, if you will, or things that they do over and over again. Ceremony, that's what I'm looking for, yeah. Yellen's letter effectively starts a clock counting down how long the federal government can continue to make interest payments on its debt. So yes, that's
strange clock, since there's no numbers on it, but because they can't predict how long it's going to last.
No,
so it's the crippled clock.
Congress in December of 2021 increased the federal debt limit to about $31.4 trillion. So it's been about a year. They've already hit the debt limit again, and now they're going to need to raise it again, which of course they're going to do. I mean, for all the talk of the Republicans being so-called small government, they're going to do what it takes to save it.
Yeah, they introduced a bill just a few days ago to abolish the IRS and eliminate the income tax. And
the fair tax bill.
Wouldn't it be interesting if they'd done that when they didn't know it was impossible?
Yeah,
because
Biden's in office.
A couple of years ago, when Trump was in office, they held the Senate.
Yes, they did.
They held the House.
Sure did.
Or at least they were.
They had them both during Trump.
They did have both
for a time
of them in the first Trump.
Yes, first half I think of Trump.
First half of Trump. So they had
done it.
Obviously the presidency. They could have done it, pushed it through, and made it law. The thing that they know they can't do now is push it through and make it law. The other interesting thing about Republican watching is whenever the Democrats want to push through a crazy new bill like that $1.7 trillion omnibus bill, just enough Republicans always cross the line to get the bill passed, but no more. I imagine they draw lots for who gets to be the unlucky
sacrificial
one.
lamb. Well, most of the Republicans will probably forget about it by election time anyway on whoever it was that crossed the line. Let's go to the phones here. We got somebody calling in here. You're on Free Talk Live. What's your name?
Cynthia.
Cynthia, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, two things. Number one is that we need more emphasis put on our constitutional sheriffs. Those are local elections where maybe libertarians might have more clout, and that they're primary guardians of keeping either state or federal government or county government of intruding upon the rights that you're guaranteed under the Constitution.
Yeah,
And,
if you hear a lot about these constitutional sheriffs, you don't really see a lot about them. You don't really see the results of the supposed constitutional sheriffs out there.
Sheriff Mack, I heard him interviewed yesterday.
Is he still a sheriff, by the way?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so.
It's an honorarium at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one who held the line on the feds on the Brady bill, right? Went all the way to the Supreme Court. No, they can't insist that your sheriff enforce a federal law. They can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was refusing to do this registration and pick up a weapons or something. So he was saying there was only maybe 5% or less of that he thinks our sheriffs are actually actively intending to be constitutional sheriffs.
That sounds like a reasonable presumption. We know there's one guy down in Arizona who is on the border. He's on one of the border counties in Arizona, and he is actually a Democrat who is in favor of immigration, although he's really a libertarian. I think he even described himself as an anarcho-capitalist or whatever, if I recall correctly. He's a really interesting guy. He called our show.
Well, he can be that once he drops the support of immigration laws, which you can't have a immigration.
No, he's against the immigration laws.
He's against the immigration laws.
He's in favor of immigration.
He's in favor of immigration. Okay,
yeah.
I misunderstood. Proceed.
David Hathaway, I think is his name. And he wrote a book.
Not the guy who was on Baywatch.
No, you're thinking of
well,
different guy.
Y'all are going far afield from this topic. So,
well, no, I was giving you another example of a quote-unquote constitutional sheriff, somebody who is holding the line.
For a straight-out libertarian, you're fine with, let's call it illegal immigration for whatever reason. But the issue is that we have a contract and we're giving benefits to people who are impoverished, who are American citizens, and people with other certain criteria. And if you open it wide for anyone who wants to
What contract? I'm sorry, you said we have a contract. What is that?
Well, we have a social contract in the sense that we're giving people benefits if they're disabled.
Yeah, I don't recall signing this.
I didn't sign this either.
Where can we see this social contract? I'd like to review it.
That's where your county sheriff comes in because they hold the line on illegal behaviors in those elections.
Okay, but that didn't answer my question. You said there's a social contract, and I've heard people make this accusation or make this claim before. They don't ever have any evidence to back it up, so I would like to know, Cynthia, where is the proof?
I paid in Social Security for years, right? And now
it's taken from you.
Security check.
That's not a contract. That's, like Chris said, they stole that money from you. And so there's no contract there. Because remember, they can change the terms of Social Security at any time. So you have no contract with them. They assign you a number.
They pretend they have a contract with you because...
So let's go back to that constitutional sheriff and their responsibility to make...
No, that's not. You said there was a social contract. Where do we find it? You seem to be...
I called up about constitutional sheriff.
I know what you called about.
The line.
Let's let her proceed. All
right, fine.
I'm curious as to where she's going.
You can admit there's no social contract. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that this sheriff doesn't sound like he's being a constitutional sheriff, but that's one neither here nor the others. That most of them.
That's because you're against immigration, right?
Role. Pardon?
That's because you're against immigration.
I'm against people with weapons coming across our border when their government is trying to keep us from having a weapon. Yeah.
Okay. So let me just clarify what you're saying here. You support the government having weapons, stopping people from coming across the border because someone might have a weapon coming across the border?
Wait a minute. You just put words in my mouth.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand. That's why I'm restating what you said.
I was defending that you don't want people crossing into territory with weapons with the intention of using those weapons when you don't even have a weapon because your government has decided that you can't have a weapon.
Well, I mean, in my case, I can't because I'm convicted on some felony charges and I'm out on bail conditions pre-sentencing. But most people in New Hampshire, besides me and nobody, can have weapons. We don't have a problem. I know you're calling from, I think, California.
There are federal restrictions, though, still.
But I'm actually a Texan. I got chased out of Texas illegally, criminally.
Well, Texas you can have guns in Texas.
I had one in Texas.
Okay.
But I was not foolish enough to cross state lines with it.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't know the rules here.
Right. So what's the concern about people coming here with weapons? I'm not real clear on that.
Well, my concern is that we don't have constitutional sheriffs, that we have the right to have them. It's in the Constitution, and that people need to stand up for the elections. And the most important election is who is going to be your sheriff.
Okay. Well, I mean, if more people who actually respected rights were running for sheriff, maybe we'd have more of them. But the job attracts psychopaths who want to use violence against peaceful people.
Well, you don't want violence, right? You just want them to uphold your right to be free from violence.
That'd be great.
Wouldn't it be easier just to dissolve the position?
Speaking of violence, did you know that the Pentagon...
She's not here to answer questions, Chris.
Do you know they're behind the vaccine, the COVID vax?
Who?
The Pentagon has held the contracts backing up the COVID vaccine.
Well, it really doesn't matter to me who's behind it. I mean, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to use. I'm not going to be persuaded to take it in any way, shape, or form. I'm not interested in being an experiment. Thank you, Cynthia, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The number 603-283-6160. If you call into the show, I mean, I want to have a conversation. I don't want to just have a lecture series by somebody calling in who just wants to be able to spout off and doesn't want to answer any follow-up questions, doesn't want to answer any kind of inquiry as to what their opinion is.
Yeah, it's a two-way conversation, not just a...
Right, that's what a conversation is.
It's not just what is it, like an outlet to speak... I mean, it is
a podium.
Right, it's not just a podium. It's a conversation we're trying to have.
Yeah, and I got questions, and if you want to start talking about a social contract, I want to see the evidence for it. And the fact is she doesn't have any evidence for that. And then she wants to go off on immigration and, start fear-mongering about immigrants who have weapons. I don't care if somebody has a weapon and they come across the border. If we're free to have weapons, then it doesn't matter. I mean, the supermajority of people that come here are looking for a better life for themselves. They're not murderers. They're not rapists. They're not a threat to anyone. No more so than the average native-born Americans are a threat.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing about it. Like, if you look at statistics, it's not like there is a disproportionate percentage of the people coming over the border who are, murderers or rapists or thieves or whatever,
not at all,
relative to our own population. So if you increase that population, it's going to be about the same in terms of like what percentage of people are murderers, rapists, and thieves or whatever.
So in other words, you'd avoid just as many murderers and rapists if you legalized abortion than if you closed the border.
Yeah,
run that by me one more time.
Legalizing abortion would
it would have no effect.
Prevent as many felonies as closing the borders.
Yeah, it's basically he's saying it has no effect.
Well, I mean, in theory, you could say that legalizing abortions are probably more likely to be done by people who don't want to have children, more likely to be done by impoverished people who can't afford to have children.
Maybe.
And if you're not raising kids in an environment with parents that actually want them to be around, there's a good chance those people may turn into dangerous criminals down the line. So you actually may reduce crime by legalizing abortion.
Freakonomics actually makes the argument that the major reason for the drop in crime after the 1970s was precisely the legalization of abortion and having fewer children raised by families that did not want them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've never understood the conservatives who are so insane about making abortion illegal. It's like most of the people who are going to get abortions are probably your political opponents. They're more likely to get abortions. Why do you care so much?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably something that they can only win periodically. I mean, Basically, they outlaw the conservatives outlaw abortion. The liberals have more babies until they can overcome the conservatives and legalize abortion. In which case, they have fewer babies until the conservatives can overcome them and outlaw abortion again.
Yep.
And then the liberals will be on the rise.
Or they could just break up, have a national divorce, and then go off and have their, the liberals can have their socialist paradise, and the conservatives can have their theocratic nightmare or whatever.
Into that vision of the future, because it sounds a heck of a lot better than the other.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just stay here in New Hampshire, but y'all can fight it out however you like.
So to go back to the story here about the U.S. hitting its debt limit as soon as this coming Thursday, they're saying they may be able to string it along until as late as June with various different extreme measures or whatever, quote-unquote extraordinary.
They didn't consider it extreme to pass a $1.7 trillion omnibus bill, though. That's not extreme.
Nope, and $31.4 trillion isn't enough, so they now want that to be raised, the federal debt limit, to go up to God knows what now, 35? I don't know. I don't know what it was raised from when they raised it to 31.4. The limit is the total amount, this is according to CNBC, of money the U.S. government is allowed to legally borrow to pay for its existing obligations. Those obligations include Social Security and Medicare benefits, military salaries, interest on the national debt, tax refunds, and other payments, according to Janet Yellen. The so-called extraordinary measures available to the Treasury Secretary free up the government's borrowing capacity. It can extend the clock for weeks or months while Congress hashes out a bill to raise the borrowing limit. Yellen wrote that the two extraordinary measures that Treasury expects to implement are redeeming existing and suspending new investments of the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund and the Postal Service Retiree Health Benefits Fund, and suspending reinvestment of the Government Securities Investment Fund and Federal Employees Retirement System Thrift Savings Plan. So it sounds like pension stuff. Sounds like they're going to put some pension-related monies on hold. She said Congress previously authorized the Treasury to use those measures, and et cetera, et cetera. It remains unclear whether the GOP majority will unite over its own set of demands. So yes, this is going to be there's going to be some political football being played here over the next several months, as the Republicans will surely do their thing of saying, oh, well, if you don't do, if you don't let us pass this and that, then we'll have the government shut down.
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
There is actually another solution to the problem, and that is to cut the budget, right? Like, you don't actually have to spend the money. And it's funny because it's like they're talking about like pensions and education and stuff like that, and it's interesting. I did a little math the other day, and kind of relates to this. So basically, there was a 1960s documentary I just happened to be watching on. And it was basically talking about the cost of education in it was in 1964 specifically. And I was like, okay, well, wonder what that is in today's dollars for education. And I looked it up, and
wait, what was it in 64?
In 1964, I don't know what the number was in 1964 dollars, but in 2023 dollars, it was $1,800. Do you want to know? Do you want to know what Croydon was spending per pupil? $28,000.
28.
Yep, $28,000 per pupil. So that's 15 times. So yeah, could we cut the budget? I'm pretty sure we could cut the budget in half, and we'd still be fine.
Well, I mean, you are talking about a local budget versus the federal budget.
Yes, but a lot of that money comes from federal.
There's a ton of waste,
right?
Especially at the federal government level. If you want to weigh in, you can join us here at 603-283-6160. It is Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Russia is claiming that it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. It's part of a Russian military strategy to encircle the much larger city of Bakhmut. Ukraine says the battle for Soledar continues. On the Russian side, it's being waged by the Wagner group of mercenaries. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell is a global defense consultant.
The Wagner group is led by a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's actually a convicted thief, but he has recruited a whole load of convicts and but he's got his own agenda. He's got a political agenda and a business agenda. So he was desperately keen to demonstrate success where the Russian army could not succeed.
Ukraine's defense minister claimed today that the country has become a de facto member of the NATO alliance. Those comments made in a BBC interview are sure to rankle the Kremlin. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared today of 6 charges of rape. Court reporters say he was close to tears when the verdicts were returned. He will, however, face a retrial after the jury deadlocked on 2 additional counts that he denies. President Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House to celebrate a growing defense partnership between Washington and Tokyo.
These shared democratic values are the source of our strength, source of our alliance, and the source of our being able to deliver for all our people.
The 12th Artillery, currently stationed at Okinawa, are to be turned into a permanent U.S. military presence there and provided with what the Pentagon describes as more agile and lethal weaponry in a bid to offer fresh resistance to China's expansionism. They've also agreed to deepen cooperation in space. Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million today by a judge in New York after being convicted of tax fraud. FSN's New York bureau chief, Will Denzelo.
They were slapped with the maximum punishment available by the judge at New York's State Supreme Court, which is a $1.6 million fine. We've heard from Manhattan's District Attorney Malvin Bragg, who says that corporations can't serve jail time, but this is a consequential conviction and serves as a reminder that corporations and executives that defraud tax authorities can't get away with it.
Broad tributes are being paid to singer-songwriter Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who died suddenly on Thursday at the age of 54 in Los Angeles. She suffered an apparent cardiac arrest just 2 days after attending the Golden Globes to celebrate success there by a new film about Elvis. She was also at the King's Graceland Mansion last Sunday, commemorating what would have been her father's 88th birthday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live brought to you by listeners like Nelson Aquino, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program over at amps.freetalklive.com. Nelson's platinum level, which means he's doing, I think, at least $25 a month. Thank you, Nelson, for that. We only ask for $5. So definitely appreciate the support. It helps us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live, which is right now the only revenue that we have. We have no more paying advertisers on Free Talk Live.
Well, that's not good.
Which, I don't know what the reason is. Maybe it's, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, perhaps it's the fact that advertising just isn't as effective as it once was. Maybe it has something to do with the fact the federal government is targeting us. Maybe advertisers don't want to be associated with us as a result of that. But it's interesting that it all coincided with the end of the year when we were also cutting back on 2 entire commercial breaks per hour on the show. So we definitely need direct support. Want to definitely keep this thing going. We are at the lowest level of funding that we've had in more than 15 years on Free Talk Live. So even though we have more radio stations than we've, pretty much had generally. It's tougher times than it ever has been. So definitely appreciate people like Nelson helping us out over at amps.freetalklive.com. You can join us there as well, and it's still only $5 a month, which, $5 now isn't what $5 was 2 years ago, right? Like, you can't even buy 12 eggs these days for $5. That's been in the news recently. I don't know if you guys have noticed the price of eggs has been shooting up recently.
Do you have any idea what it was before and what it is now?
It was 99 cents
for a dozen eggs.
Yeah, you can get
what's it
eggs
now?
for $1, for at least 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's getting crazy out there. They've been discussing it in our chat room tonight over at chat.freetalklive.com if you want to join them. But please join the AMPS program. Thanks again to Nelson for doing that over at amps.freetalklive.com. That's our Patreon. You get some perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, which has the full show without any recorded commercials. It's there every single night. amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to Hadding calling us from Florida. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yes, when I tuned in, you all were talking about...
Do me a favor. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just back off your phone by a couple of inches. You probably sound a little bit better. It's a little overmodulated.
You weren't able to hear me very well on the screening, so
Yeah.
I felt I needed to talk louder.
No, please keep it low. We're good. We can turn you up.
Okay, well, yeah, when I tuned in, you people were talking about the paradoxical Republican support for or opposition to abortion.
Yeah.
All right. This is something that it sort of started in the late 70s. This kind of mobilization of religious fanaticism, and it's somehow connected to neoconservatism. You watch Adam Curtis's, 3-part series, The Power of Nightmares. He talks about this, how the religious right sort of came into being in the late 70s. And they've been an important factor in things like inflexible support for the state of Israel. And in domestic politics, they insist that opposition to abortion be the sine qua non of holding office for Republican politicians, which in my opinion, this has been disastrous.
Yeah, it definitely has. It definitely has. I mean, they thought they were going to win all kinds of brownie points for overturning Roe versus Wade this year, and it ended up biting them in the back.
Well, I mean, I've been aware of this for a long time. Back in 1994, I knew some women that were very active in organizing for Pat Buchanan as a Republican presidential candidate when he was trying to get the nomination.
Yep. Okay.
And I talked to these women. I said, the really important question that's going to influence the future of the USA is immigration. That's the key thing. And when you talk about abortion, you're alienating a lot of people who might agree with us on immigration. And they were persuaded by me. They thought I was talking sense. And then they had communication with the Buchanan organization, and they found out, nope, that's not the way it goes. It has to be anti-abortion. So, they end up shooting themselves. We end up not getting restrictions on immigration because of this stupid...
Well, I'm sorry. I got to disagree with you. They are also shooting themselves in the foot by not being friendly towards immigrants. I mean, there's a ton of conservative people in Mexico, a ton of Catholic individuals down there who would really appreciate the Republican viewpoint on economics, but because they're not welcoming towards them as human beings, they lose a ton of potential supporters that way.
Yeah, I mean, in most of South America and most of Central America, abortion is illegal because
I honestly don't give a damn about that. All right, look, conservatism in the USA, if we were going to speak frankly, really has two completely separate foundations. There is a race-based conservatism, and there's this stupid religious-based conservatism. All right, now
what is a race-based conservatism?
race-based conservatives are people who understand that demographics matter. All right, the composition of the population is of major importance in determining the future of the country.
I see. So, would you describe yourself as a racist?
I don't go around putting provocative labels on myself, but quietly, I would say, yeah, that's accurate.
Okay,
but
so that's why you don't care about.
that.
That's why you don't care about human freedom to cross borders. You think that brown people are inferior to yourself. Is that correct?
Well, they're not my people anyway. Listen,
they're not your people.
Here. If you listen to Rush Limbaugh carefully,
he's dead.
I know he's dead now, but he was hugely popular, wasn't he?
He was huge.
He was first, so he had the network effect. That's certainly true.
He spoke what a lot of people. Well, he's kind of a little bit sneaky, but he was a race-based conservative. You had this religious stuff as kind of a veneer.
I've never heard that claim before, and he worked with a black gentleman who was on his crew every single day.
Yeah, why do you think he had a black call screener? It was to deflect criticism.
Okay,
right?
man.
Because
that's an interesting theory. But thanks for the call tonight. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. The call screener he's referring to, Bo Snerdley, I think was his on-air name. I don't know what his real name is. That's probably, I'm guessing that's a radio name, probably not given to him by his parents. But when Limbaugh passed away, Snerdley wrote a very lengthy piece about how influential he was and that he was his friend. So I just don't. I'm sorry, don't buy that. I don't know Rush Limbaugh. I certainly have not spent the time listening to him to listen for whatever dog whistles that this caller was suggesting that Rush Limbaugh might have been throwing out over the decades. But I don't buy it. Somebody who is a racist probably is not going to want to work hand in hand with somebody of a different color. I just don't buy it. But anyway, if you want to join the show, you can. Here the number is 603-283-6160. And that guy's the reason why the Republican Party is in the bad shape that it is. Because he, as he said, he doesn't care about human freedom to cross borders. He doesn't care about the people in Mexico, Central America, or South America that are humans who want a better life for themselves. He doesn't care about that. All he cares about are his, white brethren or whatever, and he thinks the Republican Party has a future in race-based politics. And let me tell you, it doesn't.
Certainly not a good future.
No, it's dying right now, at least here in New Hampshire. I mean, it's literally aging out. We've all been to the local Republican meetings, and at least I know you. I think you've been to some of them.
Oh yeah, I've been.
Yeah, and the average age there is probably 65. Okay, and that's being generous.
Yeah.
They know that their time is running out, but yet they still continue. And I'm not saying they're all racist. I'm not going to go there and say that. But there's definitely some xenophobia with this particular group of people. There's definitely fear of Muslims. There's fear of immigrants. There's fear of the other. And that is not going to grow your party. The Democrats don't care about.
I don't know. I would worry if there was a vast number of Muslims moving into Keene, for example.
Okay.
Just because Robert Heinlein said that any religion will, if it obtains the power to do so, will make its religion law.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate concern.
That's not quite the same thing as specifically Muslim, though.
I'd be concerned if it was Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, any group that's of a religious.
I gotta say, I go one. I mean, there's a significant difference between Islam and any other religion that I know of, which is Islam is the only religion I know of where their prophet was physically involved in killing people for not believing what he believed.
Was he though?
Yeah, they were a band that was roving around Saudi Arabia and killing off other sects, especially the ones that were not monotheistic. They didn't.
That's not how I recall the story. I mean, I can't say I'm a scholar or anything like this, and I wish we still had Will Coley here to that we could just ring him up and get him on the air and talk about this.
You may not be a scholar in this department, but you are probably the best read on religions that I know anyway.
Well, I mean, I've read the Quran. I mean, I have done that. I don't
know that many people who have read the Quran.
I have done some studying on the life of Muhammad, and my reading of it. Now, to be fair, I mean, I'm hearing this from other Muslims, right? So take it with a grain of salt. But my understanding was Muslims were being persecuted at that time. They were the ones who were defending themselves against being attacked and being murdered. And yeah, they would use violence to defend themselves, but Muhammad was known for saying that if your enemy turns and runs, you are not to give chase. You are not to, stab somebody in the back or whatever. If your enemy's fighting you and they make retreat, that's the end. It should end right there. So that doesn't sound like the kind of philosophy of, kill them all, just murder everyone. I don't believe that.
And it wasn't kill them all. It was force the survivors to convert, as I understand it. Now, I could be wrong on that. I
know that
I must admit that I have not read the.
That's where some of the sects have gone. That's where the believers have gone that have sought control over the state. Certainly, they will force conversions, and this goes back to what you were saying. Any place where religion can take control of government is going to enforce its religion on other people, and these are essentially. If Will were here, Will Coley, who's an imam that was living in this area, and he was a liberty activist who was well educated on this, I think he would point out that these are essentially unorthodox people. That the people who are the Sunnis and the Shias or whatever, that these are not Orthodox Muslims. They are not following the teachings of Muhammad in the same way that Christians that are cheering on the warmongering state are not following the teachings of Jesus, right? The Christians that are cheering on throwing brown people coming from Mexico into a cage or forcing them back at the barrel of a gun or something like that. These are people who are not following the teachings of Jesus. They aren't following peaceful teachings. So, I mean, all of these major religions around the world every one of them has fallen away from the teachings of its original prophets. Even some of the Buddhists have gotten away from that. Buddha made the prediction that people were that they shouldn't, but I think he made the prediction that they were going to see him as a god and that they shouldn't. And some sects have sort of raised him above the level of a man, and that's not what Buddha wanted either. So you've had this thing happen the world around, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And, the other thing about Islam is it's 700 years younger than Christianity.
Yeah.
So it's a teenager right now. It's 13 centuries old. And if you look back at where Christianity was when it was 13 centuries old, well, that was when they were having the 30 Years' War in Europe, where a lot of different flavors of Christians were killing each other for being the wrong flavor of Christian.
What's new?
And so, it may well be that this is what the terrible teens looks like for a religion.
All right, that was funny.
But I do agree. I don't want Muslims being in the government. I don't want Christians being in the government. I don't want a government. I don't want to have a state organization that can force somebody's religious beliefs down other people's throats. Well, let's go to Major Payne. He's in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Major.
Yeah, I was watching one documentary, and there are some very insane sects of the Muslim religion.
Sure.
This guy was preaching, if you find somebody that's a non-Muslim walking through the marketplace, they call you a kafir, which basically means you're a cow. He says you can kill him, you can take him and sell him, you can do whatever you want with him. That's spooky.
For sure. Well, I mean, there's some insane versions of Christianity out there too.
I mean, that was more or less the logic that justified slavery in the United States. They they said that black folks had descended from the Egyptians, and therefore, because the Egyptians enslaved the Jews hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it was okay to randomly, lock up their descendants.
Well, it's always been spooky in the third world countries, and they are definitely a lot closer to the third world countries than we are. But as far as Bo Snerdley goes,
yeah,
I got an interesting tale about that.
All right.
I heard it on a show just after Russ died when they were doing reminiscence and whatnot. And his original call screener that was with him for like a couple years was named Bo something or another.
Okay.
And so every call screener he had after that had to pick another acronym, Bo whatever. And old Snerdley knew a story about somebody named Snerdley,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the title he put on his dog tag, so to speak.
Did you? What do you think about the caller's claim? It sounds like you're familiar with the Rush Limbaugh show. What do you think about that caller's claim that Limbaugh was some secret racist or was dog whistling to racists on his show?
I think he was one of the biggest-hearted men that ever stepped foot to the microphone, quite frankly. And he was very smart and very witty, and he brought a lot of sunshine to a lot of people's days for a lot of years. He was a good damn man.
There you go. Major, anything else you want to share tonight?
Oh, God, there was another one. Oh, what was it? Just this Elon Musk taking over Twitter, whatnot.
Yeah.
Now all the documents popping out.
Oh, yeah.
That, they were in collusion with the government for misinformation over the COVID and
Big
everything
time.
else.
Yep.
I'm thinking this is going to increase your listenership, dude, because there are people that are looking for a place to find the frickin' truth.
I sure hope so, Major. Thank you for the call tonight. Hopefully, Elon Musk being, loosening the rules over at Twitter a little bit may result in the Free Talk Live account actually having people seeing what it posts. But generally, that doesn't go so well for us. We've got, 8,400 followers, but almost no one sees what we post there.
Yeah. Did you guys hear that Twitter? Elon Musk just actually did the opposite thing of what he was saying about like opening up, and he's actually started shutting down accounts of news people, reporters.
Yeah, are you talking about there was something a few weeks ago where there were some
they
news
were reporting his location in real time
within the last couple of days, I thought.
Okay, well, that's new. I had not heard that one, but I did hear about what nobody was saying, which was there were some reporters that were reporting on this one account that I guess keeps an eye on Elon Musk's location.
Yeah, that's the gist of the story.
Yeah, this is a couple weeks old that
Interesting.
you're referring to.
I wonder what the new thing was in the other day.
As I understand it, he restored those people's accounts, including restoring Kathy Griffin's account, who he sort of famously banned early on. But look, the guy is obviously, it's his site, right? So if he gets in a spat with somebody, if he gets mad at somebody, then he's going to ban their account.
The lesson to be learned here is obviously stop relying on centralized services and solutions, because this is how problems get started.
Right. I mean, he said that he's in favor of free speech, but then he refuses to unban Alex Jones. And then when asked why, because it was actually Kim.com who confronted him about this, and Kim.com's got a big enough personality to where Elon Musk will respond to him. So they did have a little bit of a back and forth on this, and Kim.com got Elon Musk to explain why, well, if you're supposedly this free speech absolutist, as you have claimed to be, why don't you unblock Alex Jones from his account? And Musk said, well, Alex Jones, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but Alex Jones harmed children or something like that, referring to the court case in Connecticut regarding the school shooting, and Alex having the belief at one time that the whole shooting thing was, a government fabrication, etc. And so that's what Elon was sort of relying on or leaning on to say that, well, okay, Musk shouldn't be. Yeah, free speech, yes, but no Alex Jones.
The funny thing is he probably just underestimated the viciousness of the federal government, in that he didn't realize that if government wanted a pile of corpses, they wouldn't fake up a shooting. Mm-hmm. They'd just kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So, the whole crisis actor thing was
It's
I
crazy.
always thought it was a red herring.
It's just crazy is what it is. I mean, if it's not itself some sort of government misinformation plot, then it's just lunacy, basically. Because I agree with you. Like, it's more plausible. Like, there's another version of a conspiracy, right? Like, the other typical conspiracy of the mass shooter is that the government has brainwashed the mass shooter into going and actually doing the shooting.
That strikes me as more likely.
Yes.
Because it's the easiest way not to get caught, because you don't have these, for example, live crisis actors walking around looking exactly like the dead people. And you don't, the only cost to do it is you have to murder some people, and that's not going to bother the government. That's like part of that's their MO.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It's something might be distasteful, but it's far more dangerous to start banning people or censoring people, than the little bit of harm that it might, feelings being hurt effectively might occur.
Well, I got to admit, Chris, I did ban a guy from the social.freetalklive.com a few weeks ago, and the reason I banned him is because the dude started reporting other users. I'm like, we don't want snitches around here, so you can go some other server. I got better things to do with my time than deal with these reports that come in because somebody doesn't like what somebody else says. Like, that's what the block button's for, okay? So that's why we actually have something in our terms of service. It's like, you're not welcome if you want to snitch on people.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So otherwise, you can post whatever you want to.
You should hack the snitch button to just show up a screen that instead of taking a report just says block them.
That would be sweet. Unfortunately, there's just so many other things that we should be doing with our time than messing with. With Mastodon.
I'm not. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to suggest that there's never like a reason to kick somebody off of your service. It's what I'm saying is even if you want them kicked off your service, doesn't necessarily mean that they shouldn't have a service or something to go to. Right?
There are other options.
There's a right, and I think there's a huge difference between the two. Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally thousands of Mastodon instances out there. You can find one that is more like you, and then you'll be less likely to be banned from that server. What they are, I don't know. I'm sure you can find some list somewhere.
You certainly didn't ban him from Mastodon.
No, and you can't.
Right, exactly, which is the great thing about Mastodon.
But yeah, it would be nice if there was a version of Mastodon out there where somebody stripped out the reporting thing, because we get most of the reports that come in, and they don't happen very often, but most of the reports that come in actually come from people who aren't even on our server. They're reporting someone on our server to us for saying something that they don't like, having an opinion that they don't care for.
That's fine.
And we just ignore them.
And that's something you'd probably want an auto response for, just so you don't just ignore your request. You tell them why it's being ignored.
More coming up.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Russia is claiming that it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. It's part of a Russian military strategy to encircle the much larger city of Bakhmut. Ukraine says the battle for Soledar continues. On the Russian side, it's being waged by the Wagner group of mercenaries. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell is a global defense consultant.
The Wagner group is led by a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's actually a convicted thief, but he has recruited a whole load of convicts and but he's got his own agenda. He's got a political agenda and a business agenda. So he was desperately keen to demonstrate success where the Russian army could not succeed.
Ukraine's defense minister claimed today that the country has become a de facto member of the NATO alliance. Those comments made in a BBC interview are sure to rankle the Kremlin. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared today of 6 charges of rape. Court reporters say he was close to tears when the verdicts were returned. He will, however, face a retrial after the jury deadlocked on 2 additional counts that he denies. President Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House to celebrate a growing defense partnership between Washington and Tokyo.
These shared democratic values are the source of our strength, source of our alliance, and the source of our being able to deliver for all of you.
The 12th Artillery, currently stationed at Okinawa, are to be turned into a permanent U.S. military presence there and provided with what the Pentagon describes as more agile and lethal weaponry in a bid to offer fresh resistance to China's expansionism. They've also agreed to deepen cooperation in space. Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million today by a judge in New York after being convicted of tax fraud. FSN's New York bureau chief, Will Denzelo.
They were slapped with the maximum punishment available by the judge at New York's State Supreme Court, which is a $1.6 million fine. We've heard from Manhattan's District Attorney Malvin Bragg, who says that corporations can't serve jail time, but this is a consequential conviction and serves as a reminder that corporations and executives that defraud tax authorities can't get away with it.
Broad tributes are being paid to singer-songwriter Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who died suddenly on Thursday at the age of 54 in Los Angeles. She suffered an apparent cardiac arrest just 2 days after attending the Golden Globes to celebrate success there by a new film about Elvis. She was also at the King's Graceland Mansion last Sunday, commemorating what would have been her father's 88th birthday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today calls for an investigation into what campaigners are calling the genocide of crabs. At issue, the deaths of thousands of crabs in an unexplained incident along the coastline of the UK. They perished along with thousands of lobsters in late 2021 and the spring of last year. The British government says the deaths were caused by an algae bloom, a massive increase in the presence of algae that can be harmful to sea life, but campaigners are suggesting industrial dredging may instead be to blame. Geraint Davis is a lawmaker with Britain's opposition Labour Party representing the coastal city of Swansea and says university research backs the dredging theory.
Hull University found that there was no reason to think there might be an algae bloom, particularly this year. And it looks like there's been much more active dredging, which has dug up pyridine, which is a chemical that's highly toxic to crabs, kills them instantly with immediate contact. And they've tested and found that pyridine is found a few centimetres below the seabed, and this is a likely explanation. So what's happened is we've called for an independent inquiry into which is the answer. Is it pyridine or is it algae bloom?
Researchers say earlier algae blooms did not cause mass deaths, but any evidence that industry might be to blame will have big political consequences as well as ecological ones. The main news again, Russia is claiming it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. Ukraine denies it. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared of 6 charges of rape, but will face a retrial on 2 counts over which the jury deadlocked. And Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million by a judge in New York, the maximum possible after being convicted of tax fraud. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The American robin heralds the beginning of spring in temperate climates across North America. Its red breast makes it easily identifiable as the most disturbingly efficient murderer in the animal kingdom. Robins inculcate their young with these twisted maws. We see an adult robin feeding its young with the ripped-apart viscerae of an innocent worm. Like the Greek hero Atreus eating the flesh of his children at his own table, this black deed must surely curse the entire species. Even the most depraved acts of humanity pale in comparison to the robin's wickedness. Like idiot rapists, they commit their foul deeds with neither foresight nor hindsight. They live entirely in the present. Living beyond space and time, their god is the awful seething maelstrom of chaos at the center of the unfeeling universe.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live, and welcome to the second hour of the program. Phones are open if you want to join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
You can join us online anytime you want. Just head on over to freetalklive.com. Chris has a story when we get a chance, but we've actually had some good calls here so far tonight. Of course, prefer to hear from you with whatever's on your mind, but Chris has a story about an attack on cryptocurrency happening not in the U.S., but Canada. And
I don't know if it's an attack on cryptocurrency, but maybe indirectly.
We'll get into it. And then also, I've got one from Bulgaria where they're going after a crypto lending firm called Nexo. So we can get into those stories. But, of course, your calls and thoughts are welcome. Let's go to the phones. And to the phone, we got Dave Ridley on the line from Ridley Report.
Oh, hey, Dave.
Hey, Dave. What's on your mind?
Hey, guys. So the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance it gets this subtlety award for the month. They have made a declaration, a ruling or a declaration, whatever you want to call it, that has increased my faith in them, which was already pretty high. But so there's this problem with Liberty Bill, or people will submit a Liberty Bill. Our plan is to force the government to spend more money on liberty, or we're going to force people not to engage in activities with each other that we think are not pro-freedom. Attempts to restrict unions or attempts to make public schools do certain things that might be pro-freedom, but they cost more tax dollars, right? So oftentimes you'll find liberty organizations just jump right on that bandwagon and try to, increase that funding for liberty, right? But the Liberty Alliance didn't do that in this case here. So there's this bill called House Bill 102, quote unquote, requiring high schools to include instruction on the nature and history of communism, unquote. And to my pleasant surprise, the Liberty Alliance opposed this, even though on the surface it would seem like it's kind of a pro-freedom thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, plus, how are you going to be able to control what all the teachers say about communism? Oh, yeah, sure, we'll instruct the kids on the nature of communism, and then if it's a communist who's the teacher, then obviously they're going to have a different opinion than somebody who is critical of communism as a teacher.
Yeah, and if you think about it, one of the things that liberals are upset about in New Hampshire these days is that, or progressives or whatever you want to call them, they're they're upset about, like, liberty folks have been associated, rightly or wrongly, with these new restrictions on teaching critical race theory. Like there's these new bills in New Hampshire. They came law that said, well, you can't teach critical race theory in the schools. Well, how does that work? How do you stop teachers from opening and closing their mouth on whatever they're thinking? That's just not the place to draw the line.
Yeah, you're bringing up something that has become quite controversial, and essentially it is very hard to enforce, because the only way you would find out what a teacher is saying is if one of the students in the class was to reveal that and essentially, rat him out. So it's been hard for them to enforce that, but essentially it was a big, for the conservative types and for the libertarians who backed that particular legislation. It was basically just something that they could pat themselves on the back and, show off to their constituents to pretend like they were doing something about critical race theory.
Well, and I was having a conversation with a progressive dude that I know, and he was saying, this is like a book ban, right? These libertarians are putting a book ban on us practically, and I couldn't argue with him.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I get their argument. Their argument would be that, look, this is the state school system. If you want to teach critical race theory, which is essentially teaching racism, as I understand it, I mean, the idea is that the critical race theory teaches that white people are bad and it's so on and so forth, white people are all oppressors, things like that. It's just ridiculous nonsense. So, I mean, I agree that it should not be taught. I don't want to see my tax dollars going to teaching that. So I understand their argument is that, look, as long as we're all being coerced into supporting this system, the system shouldn't be teaching kids to be racist. Should not teach kids that one race is better than the other, and that's the way the legislation is written. It's not written, as I recall, to specifically quote unquote ban critical race theory, but it bans the teaching that one race is superior to another, and that's not particularly offensive to me from their perspective. But I understand that the counter arguments too is like, well, how can you restrict what teachers say? Well, the answer is they're government school teachers. If you want to teach critical race theory, then take your kids to a private school that teaches critical race theory. So, I mean, I wish they would just propose abolishing the government schools altogether.
Total separation between church and state is so much cleaner.
You know what we need is a separation between school and state.
I'm sorry, Did I say church? I meant to say school there.
Well, the schools are essentially a government church, right?
Yeah. Right.
They're the Sunday school of...
this is sort of like money and state, right? We need to separate money from state.
I think that's where the problem really lies here, Dave, is that these liberty reps are not hardcore enough. We have not gone far enough into getting enough free staters elected to where they feel like they're comfortable actually putting forward some principled legislation like abolishing government schools entirely.
Yeah, or they could just reduce the funding, do a defunding thing, or they could make it impossible to arrest anyone for failing to fund the government schools.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Make it.
It's actually interesting that you say that, because as I understand it, the state actually budget has reduced funding to the schools in New Hampshire. And it's more the burden is now more on the local tax dollars as opposed to the state.
Well, yeah, but the state still gets it's not a home rule state. So if the state wants to completely, negate funding, for
they could do that. All I'm saying is that they have removed some of the, I guess, however the state gets its money. They're not sending as much to the local schools.
Yeah, the locals are mad about that.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, we need more hardcore legislation being proposed. We know it's not going to pass, right? Like, for instance, Matt Santonastasso probably is the most hardcore pro-liberty state rep out there. He got a 100% on the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance ratings last year. He's, as of this year, it's his second term as a state representative. He's our Nightcap rep, by the way. He used to come out and hang out with us at Nightcap here in Keene, and it turns out he's like the most principled guy. He put forward a bill this year, and it's probably going to get hacked up in committee or whatever, but he put forward a bill that would, if passed as originally proposed, would eliminate the war on drugs in New Hampshire. We finally got it after all these years of nibbling at the edges on marijuana and we're going to try to decriminalize mushrooms, which I support all that, right? We've never had until now an actual proposal to literally strike from the New Hampshire statutes the entirety of drug prohibition. It would just be gone entirely. And so we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting to see what kind of results that gets.
Be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that hearing.
There are
Go ahead.
There are 1,000 hacking at the branches for every one striking at the root.
Indeed, Ridley. Anything else you want to share tonight?
That is all.
Thanks for the call. He does mention, by the way, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and we didn't explain for you what that is. Do either of you want to take a crack at explaining the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance?
I'll pass.
So it's an organization that, as far as I know, doesn't exist anywhere else in the United States. They actually are a libertarian-created group. They're founded by New Hampshire natives, and I believe some Free Staters, if I recall correctly. Founded something like 20 years ago. I believe it was like right at the very beginning of. It may have even been before the Free State Project took New Hampshire as its destination state. So it might have just been natives that founded it. But anyway, there's a lot of Free Staters that volunteer for it. And what they do is they actually look at all of the legislation that gets proposed. So in New Hampshire, it's generally like 800 to 1,000 bills every single year. That's a lot of potential legislation to look through. But they look through as much of it as they possibly can with the volunteers that they have. It's a completely volunteer organization. Zephin, who we've had on the show, is the #1 bill review guy. He did almost 400 bills on his own last year. I mean, it's an incredible level of dedication to what is a brutal task of having to actually read legislation. I don't know about you, but I hate reading legalese and reading legislative things.
Terrible. I do it every once in a while, and it's like...
It's hard. But some people enjoy it.
Yeah.
And those people who enjoy digging through legislation, they should, if you're a liberty-minded person, you should get active with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance because they need help. They need as many people to go through these 800. I don't know how many it is this year, but I'm just going to guess somewhere over 800 if it's pretty consistent with previous years. So they read those bills, and they have a system that other liberty-minded programmers have programmed that's an online web form, and you can select the bill you want to review. You can read through the bill, and then it asks you a series of questions about the bill, like does it affect liberty, positive or negative? And so you sort of give it a score, and then you answer several questions about how or what it does, and that way you can show that you've actually looked at it and you can answer these questions. And so then that gets submitted. Other people can review that as well, and other people can also review the same bill. So even though you might have already reviewed a bill as, say, negative for liberty, somebody else might be able to come in and say, oh, you're not right about this. Here, you missed this part. It's actually positive for liberty because you read it the wrong way. And so then you have two different reviewers with different opinions. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. The more people that can kind of get their eyes on these things, the better. Because sometimes you'll miss something, right? Like reading legalese is not the easiest thing to do.
Sometimes it's there. Some of these bills are sometimes lengthy too, or not even lengthy. Just like it'll be like 90% of the bill is like, not necessarily great, but it doesn't necessarily have any impact. And then there'll be like this last part at the very bottom of this bill. Like there was this Democrat bill that was like that, and the very last part was great, and it had to do with basically giving people the right to demand the source code for the devices that the government used to create evidence against you. So think of it like a speed camera, right? If they use a speed camera against you to create evidence, well, then you have to be able to, see the sources, and that sources has bugs, and so therefore you can prove in court that evidence is defective, right? And you can't.
If they'll even show you the code, they might not even. Then
this bill would guarantee you that right to see that evidence. And of course, you're never going to see that source code. So it basically would mean that all that evidence would have to be thrown out.
Dismiss the case.
Yeah.
Did that pass?
No. Okay. It was no chance of passing because it had 90% of it. Like the first 90% of it was stuff that was like, it was like a wish list for Democrats, but there was one part in it that was great. If they just cut out the first 90%, libertarians could have gotten behind it.
Well, usually in New Hampshire, there's only one subject per bill. You don't get to do a bunch of different things in one bill.
Like it had stuff in it that was like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it was like, I'm trying to think one of the examples. It was like something to the effect of, some sort of employment contract thing, and it basically would say, okay, you don't have to comply with the employment contract terms or something. And it was kind of weird because it was very specific to free software developers, and it's like, well, no free software
you're saying
developer.
This is a software related bill. Overall.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it had multiple aspects to it, and it's like nobody who's a free software developer is going to agree to those terms in an employment contract in the first place. So who's this actually going to affect? Nobody. But this last part of this bill,
probably would not agree to those terms.
right? Exactly, and so it's like I wouldn't agree to them either. This is what I'm talking about. Like free software people aren't going to agree to them, and if this is only applicable to free software people, then there's no point in this bill. I mean, well, except for that last part, right? So it's like, okay, if you pass this, only good things could happen. Basically, is how I saw it, but those other parts result in like other libertarians not understanding it all and like refusing to go along with it. But this, I think, is a good example of where you could kind of have two different perspectives on things, and sometimes things aren't really, they're not totally black and white, I don't think.
That's true sometimes. So that's one of the things the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance does, is they review the bills, as many of them as they possibly can, hundreds of the several hundred that there are, and then at the end of the year, they do a grading on the state reps. They actually look at how the reps voted, and there's 400 state reps in New Hampshire. So again, this is a huge undertaking to look at how all 400 of the state reps voted on key bills. They don't look at all 800 bills or whatever. They only look at certain things that they believed would affect liberty, either in a negative or a positive manner. And they come up with a score based on the voting record of each of these individuals, and then they publish those scores in a document that comes out every year, and they pick the top winner basically for the Liberty Legislator of the Year award, and they give that out, and so that's a cool thing. So some of these state reps actually want to get a good score, right? Like this is a badge of honor for them to be pro-liberty, and so it's kind of this incentive for some of the state reps, the more liberty-leaning reps, to be a little more liberty-friendly than they might otherwise be, because they don't want to get a bad score from this relatively influential organization. And the other thing that they do is they take the recommendations that if you were to be one of their bill reviewers, and by the way, you can help the Liberty Alliance if you don't live in New Hampshire. You don't need to live here to read a bill and review it. So if you're looking for a way to help the New Hampshire freedom movement from outside of New Hampshire, besides just donating money or whatever, this is a good way to do it. So you may want to get in touch with them. nhliberty.org is their website. So the final thing they do is they take the reviews that their volunteers create, and then they create every single week during the legislative session, which is only part-time here in New Hampshire. So every week when the full state house comes to meet, when they all 400 of them go into that big reps hall, there's Liberty Alliance volunteers standing outside of the entrances holding what they call the gold standard, which is a bill recommendation sheet. So they've got a summary. They know what bills are going to get voted on that day, and they've got a list of all the bills that are coming up for a vote and whether or not that bill is pro or anti-liberty, and then maybe a little blurb as to why. So for state reps, you can't possibly know what 800 bills are, right? Like as an individual, you cannot know.
Yeah, I've seen this firsthand having an impact, and it's always interesting. It was interesting, like a couple times when I've watched it. It's so interesting because you'll see like certain reps, like you can tell what side they're on because they won't take gold standard card, and others will, and it's very entertaining.
Yeah, so they hand out recommendations to the state reps as they walk into the chamber, and in some places you get that from the parties, right? Like it's pretty common for the Republicans to tell all the Republicans, all right, well, if you're a good Republican, you'll vote with us on these issues, or the Democrats will stay.
That's the job of the whip.
The whip, right. So they'll say the same thing to their Democrats. But in New Hampshire, you actually have the Libertarians giving voting recommendations out as these people walk in. So I am a huge fan of what they do over at the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. It's something that would be very hard for anybody, any other liberty movement anywhere to actually do, where, in other states, good luck putting the volunteer hours together for something like this, putting the technical side of things, because again, they've got a whole system, right? Like there's a website you go to, you can do the bill reviews and you can look up stuff, and it's really, really useful. They've even got their own site where you can follow certain bills, even if you're not a bill reviewer. If you're just a member of the organization, you can, if let's say let's say the bill about ending the war on drugs, I can go on their site I can put in the bill number and say, I want to watch this bill. And then anytime something happens with that bill, I'll get an email. So if the bill gets a vote, if there's a hearing coming up where people can go and speak, I'll find out about that. If the bill gets voted on, I'll find out about that. Like every step along the way, you can really kind of keep an eye on certain things that you like, which is pretty cool. So check those guys out. They're definitely worth a close look, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. Chris, you wanted to talk to us tonight about cryptocurrency, and it ties in with the discussion that we were having, I think it was last night on the show, where the SEC is continuing to file lawsuits against cryptocurrency-related companies, developers. We've, of course, seen them going after LBRY, which they sadly won the LBRY case, and they have yet to come up with a settlement there. That's going to likely destroy the LBRY Corporation, LBRY, unfortunately, but we'll keep you up to date as that situation develops. The SEC is now going after Gemini Exchange and Genesis for creating essentially an earn program where customers could deposit their crypto and get up 5% or something like that APR. They're coming after them, saying those are securities, unregistered securities. But it's not just happening in the United States. Chris, you've got a story out of Canada.
Yeah, that's right. This is a different, I think this is a little bit different, but it's an attack on, well,
if this is the Canadian version of the SEC, is it not? That we're about to talk about?
Yeah, I believe so. But it's a little bit different. And so what I would say is I don't think you might say it's an attack on cryptocurrency, but I think it's more of an indirect attack on cryptocurrency because I wouldn't consider Tether to be a cryptocurrency. But
let's hear it. What are they trying to do?
So Crypto.com is reporting Crypto.com will delist Tether in Canada to comply with Ontario regulator. So this exchange said it will no longer facilitate transactions associated with the stablecoin at the end of the month. And I think what's interesting about this is, for those who aren't aware, Tether is, and I don't know, maybe you know better than I know you haven't been able to use crypto, Ian, but is Tether still the number one stablecoin?
It is.
It is. Okay, so this is, as I understand it, it's like the thing that people buy in order to then buy other cryptocurrencies. So if you remove it, might have an impact on the market.
Yeah, Tether right now it's the number 3 coin overall when you look at market cap size. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, then Tether, and it has a $65.9 billion market cap. The second place stablecoin, which has been gaining on Tether over the last few years, is USDC or USD coin at $43.2 billion. So it's still got a ways, another 20 billion or so to catch up to them. So this is a big attack on cryptocurrency in Canada. I mean, you're downplaying this somewhat, Chris, but and whatever you feel about Tether as its own operation, whether or not it's honest, whether or not
I'm not trying to downplay it so much as to make a distinction between the two different things, right? So it's an attack on cryptocurrency overall, maybe, but it's indirect in that it's going after a stable coin that people who trade cryptocurrencies rely on, right? That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's a huge attack on the cryptocurrency industry because people rely on Tether, and now they're going to pull that carpet out from under them.
I just don't like the use of the word cryptocurrency to describe Tether. That's all I'm saying.
Tether is a crypto token. So what Tether is it is a, for listeners that aren't familiar...
It runs on Ethereum, right?
Primarily, but it also runs on, I think, Bitcoin Cash and Solana, and there's a bunch of other cryptos that can have tokens, and there are Tether variants for those as well, but probably the super majority of it is on the Ethereum blockchain. I haven't looked at the breakdown in a while, but I think they're on 7 or 8 at least different systems out there. Okay. So for listeners that aren't familiar, you've got cryptocurrency, which is sort of these what you might call the level 1 coins. So Bitcoin is an example of that. Ethereum, Dash, whatever, these other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin Cash. And then some of these coins, Bitcoin is not one of them. Ethereum is. Some of these coins have made it so you can create what they call cryptocurrency tokens on their blockchains. And that means that essentially it's a platform where anybody who wants to can go and just create a token on these platforms. We'll talk a little bit more about that and what that means and what this is, why this is a huge attack on the cryptocurrency industry, basically sounds like they're trying to ban Tether in Canada. Well, I want to hear more about the story coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. You can join us.
I just heard the best sales pitch I've heard in a long time on an airplane. The flight attendant announced, "If you paid more than $75 for your round-trip ticket, you overpaid." This is brilliant because everybody on the flight paid more, and I was struck by how all the road warriors stopped typing and reading and working and looked up. The announcement invited us to apply for the airline's credit card, and the sign-up bonus, enough frequent flyer miles for a free round trip. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade. With some banks offering free credit cards, $75 is an outrage for an annual fee, but a bargain for airline tickets. For more tips on communicating more effectively, hit survivalspeech.com, where you can see how I got the CEO of another major airline to shower me with freebies. I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Russia is claiming that it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. It's part of a Russian military strategy to encircle the much larger city of Bakhmut. Ukraine says the battle for Soledar continues. On the Russian side, it's being waged by the Wagner group of mercenaries. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell is a global defense consultant.
The Wagner group is led by a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's actually a convicted thief, but he has recruited a whole load of convicts and but he's got his own agenda. He's got a political agenda and a business agenda. So he was desperately keen to demonstrate success where the Russian army could not succeed.
Ukraine's defense minister claimed today that the country has become a de facto member of the NATO alliance. Those comments made in a BBC interview are sure to rankle the Kremlin. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared today of 6 charges of rape. Court reporters say he was close to tears when the verdicts were returned. He will, however, face a retrial after the jury deadlocked on 2 additional counts that he denies. President Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House to celebrate a growing defense partnership between Washington and Tokyo.
These shared democratic values are the source of our strength, source of our alliance, and the source of our being able to deliver for all our people.
The 12th Artillery, currently stationed at Okinawa, are to be turned into a permanent US military presence there and provided with what the Pentagon describes as more agile and lethal weaponry in a bid to offer fresh resistance to China's expansionism. They've also agreed to deepen cooperation in space. Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million today by a judge in New York after being convicted of tax fraud. FSN's New York bureau chief, Will Denzelo.
They were slapped with the maximum punishment available by the judge at New York's State Supreme Court, which is a $1.6 million fine. We've heard from Manhattan's District Attorney Malvin Bragg, who says that corporations can't serve jail time, but this is a consequential conviction and serves as a reminder that corporations and executives that defraud tax authorities can't get away with it.
Broad tributes are being paid to singer-songwriter Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who died suddenly on Thursday at the age of 54 in Los Angeles. She suffered an apparent cardiac arrest just 2 days after attending the Golden Globes to celebrate success there by a new film about Elvis. She was also at the King's Graceland Mansion last Sunday, commemorating what would have been her father's 88th birthday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it is Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up tomorrow night, 10:30 Eastern Time, you can join Nobody and a couple of our other show hosts, Captain Kickass, Peakless Mountaineer, for Beard Talk Live. That happens after hours. It is a late-night show starting at 10:30 Eastern Time, only on our video streaming platforms like Odyssey, which you can find over at video.freetalklive.com. No FCC, so it's open phones, and an open mic, meaning you don't actually have any. We don't even run the dump software. We can't hit the dump button during Beard Talk Live. So be sure to join those guys. And if you can't join them live, you can always just listen to the archive, which appears in our normal podcast, which you can get over at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. We'll talk more about what's going on in Canada, with this situation affecting the Tether, quote-unquote, crypto. It's not, as you point out, Chris, it's not a true cryptocurrency.
We may not have a solution to what Tether solves, the problem Tether solves, but I would like to see a technical solution as opposed to a centralized solution.
We can talk about that too coming up here in a few minutes. We still have to kind of explain what it is.
Yeah, definitely.
But first we have Tom in New Hampshire, I believe. Tom, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, good evening. It's about counterfeit postage stamps.
Oh.
It's kind of, well, there's a lot of them, and this has been going on for a few years now. And the Postal Service is aware of it, and they publish, a press release about it and a video about it. What goes on is, I'm not talking about legitimate discount postage, which is typically, who wants a whole bunch of 29-cent commemorative stamps? Okay, well, you're lucky if your Uncle Joe passes away and leaves behind all these sheets of, got carried away buying up too many of every new commemorative stamp.
Yeah.
You're lucky to get half the face value. If you're trying to sell them off to dealers and stuff, because nobody collects stamps anymore, and there's no demand for them. I'm talking about rolls of forever stamps. I'm talking about sheets of forever stamps.
Well, right, because some number of years ago they started putting the word forever on the first class stamp, and the claim was, hey, if you buy this at whatever the current rate is for a first class stamp, it'll always be good as a first class stamp. So if you bought a forever stamp at 45 cents, which was only a few years ago, by the way, then you would still be able to put that on an envelope today, even though the stamp price, by the way, is going up again to 63 cents per stamp. So that's what the whole forever thing was.
But what they're doing is they're selling them for 50 cents on the dollar, like rolls of 1,000 or rolls of 100 of them, which should be $60 right now, and selling them for $30 a roll.
You're saying counterfeiters are selling these stamps?
Yeah, the counterfeiters, they say they're being counterfeit in China and smuggled into the United States.
Wow.
And they have caught big batches of them. But I see these websites where they're selling these things for half the face value, and the websites are still there like a month later, 2 months later. I don't know why they're so slow in shutting them down. But just let me point something out to people that when you take a look at those websites and they're offering them for 50 cents on the dollar, and are these ones real or fake? Well, there's illustrations of them, but of course counterfeiters would just put pictures on the website, illustrations made from real postage stamps, and say, this will sell you, sheets of this, and it really is it's a picture, but that's not what they're going to sell you. They're going to sell you counterfeits that look a whole lot like that picture.
Out of curiosity, do these stamps these counterfeit ones, do they actually work?
Oh, yeah. So they figured out how to put the phosphorescent tagging on them, and the postal inspectors need to get into figuring out how to trace these back to get these people to reverse the credit card charges. Hey, the little old lady who buys a roll of them to put on the Christmas cards and mail them out. You don't want to throw her in jail. She doesn't know that these are fake, but you want to help her get her money back and charge it back to the counterfeiters. And raid the place, for crying out loud. If they're selling counterfeit stamps, take the counterfeit stamps out of there,
Wow, it's interesting. So you said there's some sort of phosphorescence of the stamps? There's some kind of security feature that...
Yeah. In the 1970s and around that time, they started putting this special tagging on every stamp for the purpose of when they're going through the machines, that picks up, there's the corner that has the stamp on it, so that you face the letter this way and you put it through the machine that way, and then it goes through the canceling machine. That's what those were for. But the fake stamps didn't used to have that one until last year.
Ooh, wow.
And they started putting that on them, and they're coming out of China in humongous amounts. And, I mean, why not? I mean, if you can get 50 cents for half the value of it.
Amazing.
Then they mark them down, and they claim that they're just buying these from businesses that go out of business, mailing houses that went out of business.
You're saying the sites that are, you're saying the websites that are marketing these stamps are marketing this, saying, well, we're just buying these legitimately. These aren't counterfeit. And how would they know necessarily? I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to prove that they knew that they're counterfeit, especially if they're good counterfeits. But definitely don't patronize those websites. If they're selling them for 50 cents on the dollar and they're the latest and greatest forever stamps, they're fake. It's too good to be true. But you can still get yesteryear's 29-cent commemoratives that are genuine for 50 cents on the dollar. These are
legitimately.
Ones,
you can get those legitimately.
Stamp shows and stuff because
okay.
There's just no demand for those inconvenient denominations, and that's what that's about.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is the U.S. Postal Service, by introducing the forever stamp, killed the demand for the old denominations, because who wants those things? Who wants to deal with totaling up the number, getting the right number of stamps on? Oh, you need an extra 1 cent stamp.
I do it.
Well, yeah, but you're a dork.
Okay.
Thanks for the call, Tom. The number here is 603. But interesting call, I will say that. I mean, that's I'd seen a headline about the counterfeit stamps recently. I did not realize that they were actually.
Most people just don't send out enough letters to
these days.
To worrying about or buying up discounted stamps in the first place.
That's a great point. If you want to join the show here, the number is 603-283-6160. It does bring up a story that I had in show prep here, and that is that the price of the stamps are going up again. According to CNET, as of January 22nd, first-class stamps are going up from 60 cents to 63 cents. I thought they were 55. I didn't even know they were going. I didn't even know about the increase to 60 cents.
I had no idea what the price of stamp will go for these days.
And you ship stuff out for a living.
I do, but it's you know what it is. Usually I don't take care of the actual stamping, so I just get a bill for that, and then. As far as packages, it's not. You're not going to use stamps to send out a $3 or $4 package. You're going to print that out with the postage already on it. So yeah.
Apparently, it was the last time it was 55 cents was in 2021 when they raised it in January to 55 cents. It then went to 58 in August of 2021 to 60. July of the following year, and then this year it's going up to 63 cents. So the last time, I remember when it was like 45 cents. That was a decade ago. So it's gone up almost 50% in the last 10 years.
I probably would have guessed it was like 44 or 45 cents last time I remember hearing about it.
Yeah. So there you go. There's that news. All right, so we were talking about other money-related things. Your story, Chris, is about Canada, where their version of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, some sort of similar name, in Canada, has targeted cryptocurrency exchange Crypto.com and maybe some others with a threat regarding Tether. What's going on?
Yeah, so Tether is basically a centralized. It's backed by a centralized corporation.
Yes,
and
it's considered a so-called stable coin. And the idea is that for each Tether, there's $1 supposedly that this corporation has in a vault or a bank account somewhere. And the problem with the Tether Corporation is they've never allowed allowed a third-party audit, supposedly, of their reserves. So we really don't know. There's like a big question mark about the Tether company.
People may be relying on false promises, basically, in that regard. So, but you basically are paying $1 per tether, right? And
that's what you would pay on the market for a tether.
They're giving you $1 per tether, I guess, if you try to cash out, so to speak.
But they won't, because Tether will not take retail customers for cash outs. You can only cash out through crypto exchanges who accept Tether.
Okay.
Tether's corporation will only accept big players for potential cash outs, as I understand it.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you don't just get to ring them up and say, I got 10 Tether, can I get $10 in my bank? It doesn't happen.
So basically, cryptocurrency is, it's decentralized. What I would call a cryptocurrency is decentralized, and you're basically, at least the ones that are out there are generally their value is sort of based on what the market will allow, right?
Sure.
They're based on demand,
true
supply and demand.
original cryptocurrency.
Right. So people will buy these Tether in order to trade cryptocurrencies, trade for other cryptocurrencies, basically, like actual cryptocurrencies. So cryptocurrency exchange Crypto.com will no longer facilitate transactions involving Tether in Canada, just to be clear, and plans to delist the largest stablecoin by market capitalization for customers in the region. Crypto.com has delisted the USDT for users in Canada in accordance with instructions from the Ontario Securities they call it the Securities Commission, not Securities Exchange Commission. I think I may have said
Probably
that
the
earlier.
same thing, though.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. As part of our pre-registration undertaking for a restricted dealer license, a spokesman from Crypto.com told Decrypt. So apparently that's what's going on. So Canada is putting some sort of new regulation in, I guess. Canadian users of the exchange were notified about the company's change in policy on Tuesday via email as images of the delisting notice began to crop up on both Reddit and Twitter. This is the interesting part. The notice stated Crypto.com supported Tether will end on January 31st without specifically stating users in Canada would only be affected. So people were thinking
freaked
this
out.
was like everywhere, right? And remember, Tether is sort of the back, it's the cornerstone of the whole crypto world. So
at least of the crypto exchanges,
crypto trading world, I think is the way to phrase it.
Yeah,
people who invest in it, so to speak. Prompting confusion on behalf of some on social media. The exchange warned users that all trading, deposits, and withdrawals will not be facilitated after the deadline. Please take urgent action to review your USDT balance and take necessary action, the notice stated. Any remaining USDT balances would automatically be converted to Circle's USD coin, which is another stable coin.
Do they say, I mean, maybe it's coming up, but do they explain why they're going after Tether as opposed to going after all stable coins?
I think it sounds like, so I think it sounds like they haven't, there's some sort of registration that has to occur. So they probably just need
Tether
time
hasn't jumped
in
through the
order to
hoops.
jump through the hoops. I'm guessing.
Okay.
Or maybe they just don't want to jump through those hoops, right? I mean, Canada's not the biggest market. It's a small country population wise. So, maybe it's just too much regulation for them to bother.
Okay.
And there are apparently other stable coins that they can use. So
yes, there are.
Yeah. Tether is the third largest digital asset by market capitalization, and crypto's largest stablecoin, according to data from CoinGecko, with a total value of $66 million, as you were stating earlier.
Yep.
USD coin currently is second among stablecoins at nearly $43 billion in total value, but gained ground against Tether last year. Well, if this keeps up, they may outdo it here shortly. Stablecoins play an integral role in crypto ecosystem, giving people an option to swap cryptocurrencies for a more stable store of value, which I hate that word. It's a declining
well, yes,
store of value.
It's stable with you can only be stable with respect to something else.
Yeah, right. That's true, right?
Else.
Yeah.
So
that
it's stable in relation to the dollar.
You know that the dollar is going to go down over time, but the odds that the dollar is going to crash 10% overnight,
that's true,
relatively slim.
And the chances,
it does happen. That's what happens when Bitcoin goes up 10% in a night.
I was gonna say the chances of it going upward are zero, right? So I don't think has it ever gone up. I think it's always gone down, right?
The value of the dollar.
Yeah, I mean it's not like
it just goes down.
Yeah, so
if you ever hear the media saying the dollar's up, they're comparing it to other fiat currencies.
Right.
So it's just a race to the bottom for all of them.
Right. Let's see. For a more stable store of value without converting digital assets into so-called fiat money, such as the U.S. dollar.
Right. So this is the value, and it took me a long time to figure out the value of stable coins because I couldn't understand it early on. Like, why would someone want a digital version of the dollar?
I get it, but you're a great person to explain it because you've actually done the trading.
I think nobody you had explained this to me at some point was if you are on an exchange, which I'm not allowed to be due to my crypto restrictions on my bail conditions, but if you're on an exchange and you have, let's say, Bitcoin, and you are of the belief that Bitcoin is going to fall in value, then what you would do, And of course, you have no idea what the future is going to hold. So this is just your belief, right? Like you believe Bitcoin's going to go down. So what you do is you sell your Bitcoin on the exchange for Tether or USDC or one of these other stable coins. You get, let's say Bitcoin's at $20,000. Right now, actually, Bitcoin's above $20,000 today. It's been going up over the last 24 hours.
Doing well.
Nice.
But let's say it's $20,000, but you think it's going to crash. This is a dead cat bounce. This Bitcoin is going down to $10,000. That's your belief. So you sell it at what you consider to be the top of $20,000, and you get 20,000 Tether. Okay, and that's in your exchange account. And then if it comes true and the Bitcoin crashes after when you thought it was going to, Bitcoin goes all the way down to 11,000 or 10,000 or even 15,000, wherever it ends up going down to. You now have 20,000 Tether, and Bitcoin is now $15,000. Now Bitcoin's $12,000, and then you can say, go back in. You say you think you're at the bottom at 12,000. So then you take the 20,000 Tether and you buy Bitcoin with that. And so now you can have a whole Bitcoin again for only $12,000, and you have some Tether left over, or you can buy with all your 20,000. Now you have more than one Bitcoin, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what people do with this stuff is they basically play trading games essentially with it.
I think there's another aspect of this, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe you just explained it and I just kind of went over my head. But it's you're not paying the fees that you would pay to actually get US dollars versus Tether. With what would it cost to move from Bitcoin to Tether?
When I was using Bittrex, it was 0.25%.
A very small amount.
And what would it be for, say, converting to US dollars?
Well, some of these exchanges have US dollar on the exchange as well. So you could do the same thing. It would be the same cost, but you can't move those off of the exchanges. If you wanted to take your dollars to another exchange, they would need to be in Tether format or something like that.
Or to just an ordinary wallet.
I was thinking to a bank account maybe, but...
Well, that would be whatever wire transfer would cost in that case.
Okay.
Like $30 or
so that it wouldn't charge a fee
like
on top of that in order to take your USDs off the exchange?
I don't think so. I don't think most of them would charge an additional fee. But then, of course, if the dollars are off the exchange, then you can't easily buy the Bitcoin back, right? So the Tether makes it easy to go from one to the other in an instant, essentially.
So that instant is the main value there, as opposed to the dollars are not instant.
Well, again, if you have so some of the exchanges have USD, meaning they represent an actual dollar that the exchange itself has in a bank account, and those are instant trades on the exchange. But you can't take USD off of the exchange in any sort of meaningful sense. You can't take a USD.
So it's sort of a security. It's sort of something from a security perspective in that if your exchange dies and you had Tether on it, you lose that Tether. But if you have it in your own wallet, you don't.
No, I think we're off.
You can move Tether into your own wallet.
Yes.
In which case you would not be affected by a bankruptcy of the exchange.
What I was trying to explain
is
you
would be affected by a bankruptcy of Tether.
Right. That's what I was trying to explain is the difference. If you're on an exchange, like let's say Kraken, you can put dollars onto the exchange on Kraken, and you can trade with dollars on the Kraken exchange. But you cannot withdraw the dollars from Kraken to another your own crypto wallet, right? That you can only withdraw via wire transfer to your bank account to get dollars out. Tether, you can withdraw from the exchange to your own wallet, or you can put it on another exchange or whatever. So Tether makes the dollar more useful.
So it's not speed, it's convenience of moving it around.
It's being on the other side of the crypto barrier more than anything else, I think.
It takes the dollar, and the same thing's true for the USD coin and any other stable coin, is it makes the dollar more useful. It makes it more portable. Some of the things...
Portability.
Some of the things that...
that makes sense to me.
Stable coins can benefit certain individuals around the world is if you are in a country where the currency, the fiat currency, is in hyperinflation mode, which the dollar is not yet, supposedly. But if you're in, Zimbabwe or Venezuela or something like that, and you want to convert your local currency into dollars, but you can't physically get dollars, you could get Tether, and you can hold that Tether. So there's like people in China or wherever that are actually holding Tether balances in their crypto wallets to kind of get around the restrictions on being able to use the dollar in China as a way to kind of hedge their bets against the yuan, for instance. So it gives people more options around the world to use fiat currencies. Obviously, we're not fans of fiat currencies in general, but for those that want to deal in them, it expands their repertoire quite a bit.
I've always seen it as a solution to get around problems effectively with dirty fiat, right? Because ultimately at the end of the day, most people are not dealing with cryptocurrencies. They're not even dealing with Tether. They're dealing with dollars, right? And so this just seems like a way it's a hack to get around some of the issues that the traditional system puts in place.
That is true.
Yeah, I basically used it as a way to short crypto. Like if crypto went way down in an hour, if there is a significant drop in crypto, it's reasonable to assume that over the next few hours it will continue to drop if there's a very large sudden drop, because people will panic sell.
Right, yeah, sure. Makes sense.
So basically, if you see a large drop like that and you go into USDT, and then in the morning things look better, you go back into crypto, and you've got more Satoshi than you started out with.
All right. Crypto.com's decision to delist Tether follows regulatory clarification from the Canadian Standards. I'm going to repeat that one there. Regulatory clarification, i.e. they probably redefined it.
They made up a new law.
Yeah. From the Canadian Standards Association in December, the update was posted to the Ontario Security Commission's website. The CSA continues to monitor and assess the presence and role of stablecoins in Canadian capital markets, it stated. As a result of this ongoing work, the CSA is of the view that stablecoins or stablecoin arrangements, whatever that means, may constitute securities and or derivatives. So there you go.
That's insane.
Yeah.
How is a stablecoin a security? I mean, as we discussed last night.
I mean, they're saying a security is something that is basically representing some sort of value, right? So, I mean,
usually a security gives you some sort of say in something, right? Like you have a stock, so you own a portion of a corporation or whatever. If you have a Tether, you don't get to tell the Tether company how they do their business. You don't get a vote. It's not like a decentralized autonomous organization or something like that. So they're just calling everything they don't like a security. That's what this comes down to.
You're arguing is it's more of a commodity than a security.
It's just a digital representation of somebody that has $1 in a bank account, and it's tradable online. That's all it is. So they're just going after everything they don't like, and they sure don't like stablecoins. They really don't. They don't like Bitcoin, and they don't like stablecoins because stablecoins make fiat currency more useful. It allows you to send the value of a fiat currency to another individual without having to use the banking system. If I had, which I don't have access to, but if I had Tether, and I wanted to send you $20, I could, if you weren't sitting in the room with me where I can just hand you cash, if you're somewhere else, I can just send you over the Tether network, whichever one I want to.
I would prefer cryptocurrency.
I get what you're saying, but I could send you, if you needed dollars, I could send you dollars, and I don't have to go to the bank. I don't have to sit in a chair for 20 minutes, fill out paperwork, sign paperwork, send a $20 fee along with that.
It's probably more like 45 or more at this point.
So, like, it makes it easier. It takes out the permissionless, or it's mostly permissionless, because one of the problems with the centralized stablecoins is they can still undo it from the corporate headquarters. They can still pull that money back.
Another difference between stablecoins and cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, some cryptos. Anyway, more coming up here in moments. Hour 3 is on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
It's if I'm watching not a cable, just regular news, and they give me the news, and the next flash is two people fornicating, okay? And then every other word is F-U, a B-I-C, a hoe, and all this stuff, and penis. Do you think I need to say that? That's not acceptable no matter what. You're saying free airwaves. For anything goes for anybody.
For public access, yes. That's exactly its purpose. That's the purpose of it.
Why not?
Do you run a red light in front of a cop?
Probably not in front of a cop because he'd hurt
me. What's the same difference if you're going to have that kind of FU and seeing two people fornicating after they just said the weather is 92 degrees and 5 inches?
Wait, I think you're a little confused about something here.
No, I'm not confused.
Point of information.
You're trying to confuse people.
Let's clarify
Free
that.
airwaves are free within limits.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Russia is claiming that it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. It's part of a Russian military strategy to encircle the much larger city of Bakhmut. Ukraine says the battle for Soledar continues. On the Russian side, it's being waged by the Wagner group of mercenaries. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell is a global defense consultant.
The Wagner group is led by a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's actually a convicted thief, but he has recruited a whole load of convicts and but he's got his own agenda. He's got a political agenda and a business agenda. So he was desperately keen to demonstrate success where the Russian army could not succeed.
Ukraine's defense minister claimed today that the country has become a de facto member of the NATO alliance. Those comments made in a BBC interview are sure to rankle the Kremlin. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared today of 6 charges of rape. Court reporters say he was close to tears when the verdicts were returned. He will, however, face a retrial after the jury deadlocked on 2 additional counts that he denies. President Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House to celebrate a growing defense partnership between Washington and Tokyo.
These shared democratic values are the source of our strength, source of our alliance, and the source of our being able to deliver for all of you.
The 12th Artillery, currently stationed at Okinawa, are to be turned into a permanent US military presence there and provided with what the Pentagon describes as more agile and lethal weaponry in a bid to offer fresh resistance to China's expansionism. They've also agreed to deepen cooperation in space. Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million today by a judge in New York after being convicted of tax fraud. FSN's New York bureau chief, Will Denzelo.
They were slapped with the maximum punishment available by the judge at New York's State Supreme Court, which is a $1.6 million fine. We've heard from Manhattan's District Attorney Malvin Bragg, who says that corporations can't serve jail time, but this is a consequential conviction and serves as a reminder that corporations and executives that defraud tax authorities can't get away with it.
Broad tributes are being paid to singer-songwriter Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who died suddenly on Thursday at the age of 54 in Los Angeles. She suffered an apparent cardiac arrest just 2 days after attending the Golden Globes to celebrate success there by a new film about Elvis. She was also at the King's Graceland Mansion last Sunday, commemorating what would have been her father's 88th birthday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, calls for an investigation into what campaigners are calling the genocide of crabs. At issue, the deaths of thousands of crabs in an unexplained incident along the coastline of the UK. They perished along with thousands of lobsters in late 2021 and the spring of last year. The British government says the deaths were caused by an algae bloom, a massive increase in the presence of algae that can be harmful harmful to sea life. But campaigners are suggesting industrial dredging may instead be to blame. Geraint Davis is a lawmaker with Britain's opposition Labour Party representing the coastal city of Swansea and says university research backs the dredging theory.
The whole university found that there was no reason to think there might be an algae bloom, particularly this year. And it looks like there's been much more active dredging, which has dug up pyridine, which is a chemical that's highly toxic to crabs, kills them instantly with immediate contact. And they've tested and found that pyridine is found a few centimetres below the seabed, and this is a likely explanation. So what's happened is we've called for an independent inquiry into which is the answer. Is it pyridine or is it algae bloom?
Researchers say earlier algae blooms did not cause mass deaths, but any evidence that industry might be to blame will have big political consequences as well as ecological ones. The main news again, Russia is claiming it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. Ukraine denies it. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared of 6 charges of rape, but will face a retrial on 2 counts over which the jury deadlocked. And Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million by a judge in New York, the maximum possible after being convicted of tax fraud. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Tomorrow's my big day. I'm going to go in for surgery, and hopefully you'll come along. Now, I do have to admit that I am in a bit of pain, so I'm really looking forward to this procedure. I think we're both going to find out that having surgery just isn't as scary as it sounds.
We're covering our own Jim Haggerty's kidney stone removal surgery, and his surgery is now just minutes away. So, Dr. Atka, tell us what precautions we would take to prevent us from getting kidney stones.
Always stay hydrated. Water helps the kidneys break the stuff down.
Hear that, Jim? More water.
What?
More water. Maybe we should replace your coffee.
Please go away. Ow, no.
That's a camera they're going to use to film the whole surgery from inside Jim's body,
Yes, that's going to be pushed into Jim's urethra as well. Now, normally they wouldn't do this. This is purely for the benefit of us watching it on TV.
All right, stick with us because first he's going to pop into the children's ward to cheer up some youngsters suffering from terminal illnesses.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live as we kick off the third hour of the show. The phones are open. If you want to join us here, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features you will find there completely free. Once again, that's freetalklive.com. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. We've been talking about the world of cryptocurrency and its sort of side world of stable coins, which, as you point out, Chris, aren't exactly cryptocurrencies per se, but they do ride atop them. There's these cryptos like
interlinked is a good choice of words.
Yeah,
but
like Ethereum, which is essentially a crypto programming platform where anyone who wants to can just go and create their own crypto token. And in a lot of cases, these have been used for scams, so you have to be very careful in the world of cryptocurrency. But some of them are completely legitimate technologies that people are trying to do something different with, and it's just a way to create something that you can transfer from one crypto wallet to another, sort of without having to create your own cryptocurrency, right? So a token is sort of the poor man's crypto, essentially. You don't need to know how to program. You can just go to one of these token creation tools and just, okay, I want to have nobody coin, and then I want to have a 2 billion nobody coin, and then you have 2 billion nobody coin, and then you can send those coins to somebody else. So what Tether has done, which is the world's most popular stablecoin, so-called, it's backed supposedly by $1, but is it? That's another question. But
that's what we're about to get into.
They made it so they can create these Tether tokens that they can then send out to people, and they can use those for whatever purposes. And it turns out it's the number one trading pair system on these crypto exchanges. So every one of these crypto exchanges, almost all of them support Tether, and almost all of them have Tether as what they call the base pair of the crypto trading pairs. So they'll have different trading options for you. You can trade Bitcoin in Tether. You can trade Dash in Tether. You can trade Monero in Tether or whatever, right? So like Tether sort of links a lot of these cryptos together.
We've got eggs and spam, eggs, ham and spam, 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 and more spam.
So, but now it's under attack in Canada. Specifically, Tether is under attack, apparently. And the Canadian Securities Commission has threatened cryptocurrency exchanges, including Crypto.com, regarding Tether. And Crypto.com has now withdrawn Tether from its platform, or will be later this month.
In Canada.
In Canada.
Right. Well, there may be U.S. coming next, right? Like, who knows? If the Canadian Securities Commission gets away with this, then maybe the U.S. one will be targeting them next.
Well, I think they're actually about to talk about it in the U.S. So let's let's go a little bit more into the story. In early 2021, Tether and Bitfinex, a cryptocurrency exchange with the same parent company as Tether, were shut down in New York in order to pay $18.5 million for false statements made about Tether's backing, following a 22-month investigation by the state. These companies obscured the true risk investors faced and were operated by unlicensed and unregulated individuals and entities, dealing in
somebody panicked.
I know, right? In the darkest corners of the financial system, said New York Attorney General. Tether's
ridiculous
claims. They were at J.P. Morgan.
Tether's claims that its virtual currency was fully backed by U.S. dollars at all times was a lie. Which is something that was pointed out at the time, in that it wasn't, and then later it did come out that it wasn't, and they changed the wording of it too. So now it's backed, which is probably a good thing that it's not backed by U.S. dollars 1-to-1, but it's backed by, at least in theory, other assets like, I don't know, like houses or other investments, I guess, basically.
The term they had used for a time was dollar equivalents.
Yeah, I mean, I think
so, like treasury bonds and things like that.
It sounded. I feel like it sounded like they were very broad, and I was thinking things like stocks and other things, right?
Maybe,
but,
I don't know.
But yeah, but you might be right. Maybe.
From what I understand, they won't show an audit, so you still don't know.
Right, and one of the problems though with saying it's backed 1-to-1, though, if it was, say, a stock, stocks can also go up and down. So
that's why I think they used the term dollar equivalents. I don't think they were talking about stocks.
The
bonds,
I think
they were talking about treasuries.
The bonds would make more sense, I believe, or CDs maybe, or something like that.
Usually, the term they use is dollar denominated, because basically, if you're denominated in dollars, then you will stay stable against the dollar.
Right.
If you're denominated in ounces of gold, then and gold goes down. Then all of a sudden you're not fully covering what you're trying to cover.
In response to USDT's delisting from Crypto.com, a spokesperson for Tether told Decrypt that Canada is not a core market for Tether.
Okay, so you were right. Your prediction was that they didn't care enough.
Yeah. The spokesperson added, while this does not mean that we will abandon our interest in ensuring that Tether products can be used beyond any borders, we abide by regulatory guidelines. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like maybe this is more of an issue with Tether than it is even with Crypto.com. So I'm wondering if the other I don't know, exchanges, I guess, will also be delisting it.
Don't know. I'd say there's a good chance if Tether isn't willing to jump through the hoops of the Canadian government,
right?
Then it becomes a risk to carry them on your platform.
It seems like it would be dependent on Tether in this case too, because it's the one that appears to be getting regulated, and the other, I don't know, because they both are regulated. I would think both Tether,
they're all regulated. What it sounds
them.
Like is that the other stable coins have jumped through the hoops and Tether hasn't.
Right. The spokesperson described...
Is Crypto.com a Canadian company?
Not to my knowledge, but they operate in different countries.
Right.
The spokesperson described Canada as moving more aggressively to regulate crypto compared to most countries, adding a fair, open...
Is this a
Wow.
spokesperson for Tether?
A spokesperson is described, I'm guessing, yeah,
Okay.
I think so, which is interesting. This is interesting, the way they're wording it, too. The spokesperson described Canada as moving more aggressively to regulate crypto compared to most countries, adding, this is the funny part, a fair, open, and forward-looking approach to financial access should be encouraged. Oh, okay. Okay, so they added the word encourage to that. I thought they were calling it fair, open, and forward, like, yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's it for the article.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that doesn't bode well.
No, it doesn't.
For what's going on in Canada. Of course, they had some real egg on their face after the Canadian truckers situation a year ago. Was it just a year ago?
I bet you that's why they're cracking down so
Or
hard.
was that 2 years ago? Was that 2021 or
It was a
2022?
couple years ago, I think, wasn't it?
It's getting real close.
It must have been 2021.
It was the dead of winter.
Yeah, it must have been 2021 because I feel like that went down before the Crypto 6 raids did.
Yeah, I think so.
So anyway, the truckers made the Canadian government, I think they embarrassed them because
sure.
The Canadian government tried to crack down on those truck drivers and the money that they were receiving through fiat currencies. And they were able to do that. They were able to scare the Canadian banks into accepting the wire transfers from the donors, which had raised over 10 million Canadian dollars or whatever. They stopped that cold. But they couldn't stop the truckers from getting Bitcoin and Monero donations, and they are pissed. I mean, the Canadian government's pissed about that.
This is one of the dangers of relying on a central bank or government-issued currency. They can shut you off from the system if they don't like you, and they will. Canada has shown they will absolutely do that. Now, Canada isn't the United States, but let's be honest.
They're worse in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they are, but they're not that different. Canada and the United States. They're both Western countries. They're both
it's very
modern
similar
countries.
up there.
It's very, very similar. So if Canada can
Except
do this,
for all the toques.
if Canada can do this to the truckers, even if you don't support the truckers, you should be concerned because what happens when they come after you?
Great point. Let's go to the phones here. We got Joe on the line in Maryland. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Joe. Joe, Maryland, going once.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, you're on the air.
Hi, Chris. Yeah. I just like to talk and say to people ought to be thankful for the show because you guys expound freedom. And that's really important in people's lives. Now, the government says, well, just trust us. But that's what Joseph Goebbels said. And our country is going to crap. And here's one thing that really boggles my mind. They say there's $65 trillion missing.
Who does?
I read it on a news site, and they say in the government there's $65 trillion missing. And that would solve all the country's problems.
Well, no, it wouldn't. I mean, there's no way you can solve all of the problems.
I'm making like a generalization.
Mm-hmm.
It would solve a great deal of them. And then we ought to get.
Well, what it would do is if they all of a sudden uncovered $65 trillion, is it would increase the money supply dramatically and creates more problems from inflation. I don't know where it's still unclear.
If they found that money and paid the bonds off, then it would eliminate the national debt.
Okay, here's the story I just found from Bloomberg, quote unquote, missing $65 trillion, huge missing and growing in dollar debt, $65 trillion in dollar debt. I'm trying to, they locked the website down here. See, I got another one here.
It's always so annoying.
I'll see if I can figure it out for you here.
Well, there's just to give you the meaning of a piece of this. One day they found that the Pentagon had misplaced $2.5 trillion between Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, actually, it was before the Iraq War, but they had misplaced $2.5 trillion.
And by misplaced, it's never coming back.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we don't know exactly what it means because all of the records were stored in the Pentagon in the accounting section, and the day they discovered this was 9/10 of 2001, and
convenient.
The airplane with the missile engine hit the Pentagon the next day, right where they stored their accounting records.
How about
so that data is gone.
What a coincidence.
Isn't that convenient?
Oh, there's this thing in, the corporate world. It's called backups. And I'd like to think it's in most people's homes as well. But I'll be honest, I don't know that most people are backing up their data. But you should be.
Yeah, an off-site backup as well.
Yeah, right? Off-site. There's redundancy for like servers so that if one drive dies, you don't lose anything. Right. And then there's also backups, and then there's also off-site backups, especially in the corporate world.
Institutions, this is according to Pensions and Investments. So, Joe, this is a story you're referring to with the $65 trillion. Pensions, pionline.com. The site says institutions outside the United States are holding an estimated $65 trillion in quote-unquote missing dollar debt off of their balance sheets through currency derivatives, making it harder for global policymakers to anticipate the next financial crisis. According to a paper from the Bank for International Settlements, this very short-term hidden borrowing forms part of a huge missing and growing debt that the likes of pension funds owe through foreign exchange swaps and other derivatives transactions. And that's more financial gobbledygook than I can possibly process. I don't know what any of that actually means. Do you? Do any of you guys know what that means?
I got nothing.
Yeah,
Joe?
Not sure.
Yeah, I can't even fathom $65 trillion. I mean, is the planet worth $65 trillion? I mean, it's really ridiculous.
That is a good question.
I mean, that's a lot of money either way, whether it is or isn't.
And we got to stop killing each other. I mean, everybody's fighting wars and stuff, and what are they fighting them over for? For real. It's either religion, a piece of property, or some money.
Yep.
And it's ridiculous.
Yep.
People's lives are being given up for 3 stupid reasons.
Thank you, Joe, for the call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you. A little bit more here, maybe worth sharing. According to Pensions and Investments, they say here that banks headquartered outside of the United States carry $39 trillion of this debt, more than double their on-balance sheet obligations and 10 times their capital.
Wow.
So that sounds like that's a bad thing, but I don't really know what the ramifications of that are. But if you know more, feel free. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. So we finished the crypto story, I think, Chris. Yeah. I had a related one from this is from CoinDesk.com. We talked last night about these crypto lending operations. So Gemini had one of them. Gemini is a crypto exchange based here in the United States that was all about regulations. They wanted to, please regulate us harder.
Sounds like Paxios.
Paxos?
Paxos, am I saying that right?
Yeah, they're one of them too.
Yeah.
But Gemini has been targeted now by the SEC here in the United States for offering a so-called security by offering to pay people on a yearly basis or an APR or whatever for depositing crypto with them, and then they can then loan it out. Well, there's companies that are like this. Celsius is one of them. They went down in flames in the summer of 2022. And Celsius's big competitor was a company called Nexo, or is a company called Nexo. Nexo has not gone bankrupt at this point. However, they are now being targeted in Bulgaria, according to CoinDesk.com, into alleged money laundering and tax violations. According to the story, they're being investigated on suspicion of money laundering, tax offenses, banking without a license, and computer fraud. The Bulgarian prosecutor's office is conducting an investigation in Sofia to, quote, neutralize the criminal activity, unquote, of Nexo, according to an automated translation of a statement issued on Facebook Thursday. More than 300 people are involved in this operation. The Attorney General from Bulgaria had this to say. The main organizers of the scheme are Bulgarian citizens, and the activity was carried out mainly from the territory of Bulgaria. He said further evidence has been collected that a person who used the platform and transferred cryptocurrencies has been officially declared a terrorist financing person, according to the statement. So apparently, just because
like a taxpayer.
Apparently, just because Nexo had a customer that is now allegedly a terrorist, apparently that means Nexo's in trouble.
That's crazy. I mean, do you think that the the hijackers on 9/11 weren't using the financial system, traditional banks at that point, right? To transfer money abroad and so forth? I mean, they had
regulated.
They had government driver's licenses in the United States.
Well, as we learned,
I mean, come on, give me a break. How is anybody supposed to be responsible for what another person does?
As we learned in the Crypto 6 trial that I, unfortunately got found guilty at, we learned that it doesn't matter what happens to financial fraud victims as long as they go through a bank. So it's okay if old ladies are scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, or an old man is scammed out of $1.2 million, as we saw some of these victims come up from these online scams. It's totally fine if they go to the bank and send a wire transfer to the scam artist. But if they go to a Bitcoin seller, and the Bitcoin seller also gets fooled by these people who are telling lies to them, because they tell lies to the bank tellers to get them to send the wire transfers, and then they tell lies to buy Bitcoin. It's the Bitcoin people who get to go to prison, not the bank tellers. So as long as you have the government permission slip, it's totally fine. They don't care about what happens to these victims. In a thread on Twitter, Nexo said it's cooperating with relevant authorities and regulators. It says it has stringent anti-money laundering and know your customer policies, and implied that it was being targeted unfairly. Nexo's spokesperson said in an email to CoinDesk, quote, "These are authorities at one of Nexo's offices in Bulgaria, which is, as you know, the most corrupt country in the EU." Well, what do you have offices there for? Not that there's any safe place to be as a crypto company.
Yeah, also, if they're Bulgarian nationals, they might, I don't know what economic regulation is like in there, but they might not be able to invest outside their country.
Yeah, what's interesting is about some of these situations is like, you can't tell. There are obviously, some like really, how do I say this, corrupt and dishonest figures out there, people out there doing some really bad stuff, right? But there's also people out there that are being targeted by the government who are doing nothing wrong, and yet they're using the same, claims, false claims against those individuals. So if they want to come after you, there's nothing you can do. You can't. There's no amount of compliance you can do, and be so-called safe from their false claims. Just because
the way to be safe is to donate to the Democrats and Republicans.
That definitely helps, right? I'm sure that helps, but yeah, no. I mean, if 90% of the people, if 90% of people out there, let's just say, or an industry, right, are criminals, that doesn't mean that every single other participant in that industry is a criminal.
Mm-hmm. And that's not even true in the case of cryptocurrency.
Not,
it's more like 1%.
Right. It's not. But if the media is able to sell that story, and then you have a jury, right? What does the jury think? The jury just goes to assume, everybody involved is must be some sort of criminal. Yeah. It doesn't matter how much evidence you have. That it doesn't matter even if the prosecutor's own evidence disproves their story. Guilty.
According to Nexo, they said they are making AML and tax-related inquiries. AML stands for anti-money laundering, by the way. And tax-related inquiries about a Bulgarian entity of the group that is not customer-facing but only has back-office functions, payroll, customer support, compliance. We are one of the most stringent entities with regards to KYC, AML. Following the news of the investigation, according to CoinDesk, more than $3 million worth of crypto left the company's platform. That's the customers saying, okay, it's time to withdraw. These guys are under attack. The lender's native coin sank around 7% to as low as 70 cents. At the time of writing, was priced at just under 73 cents. Now, this story didn't have what I thought it did, and there's other stories about this, that they got raided. Like, this is a serious attack against this crypto company. They had their offices
They must
raided.
not have been paying off the Democrats and Republicans as well as FTX was.
Or whatever the equivalent is in Bulgaria.
They're local. Yeah. They're probably better off paying off their local thugs, politicians, because I don't know.
But you have to wonder, what is the safest political jurisdiction for crypto corporations? I mean, it seems like it's very hard to find, right? Like all of these
probably
governments.
El Salvador, because they've made it legal tender, so they're all in.
That's a good point. And they don't have a central bank.
Yeah.
So if you're a crypto company and you're looking to migrate, and if I were a crypto company that's developing new concepts, new ideas, whatever, I would be looking to get the hell out of Europe and the United States and any other place that has a central bank.
You might be right, Ian, about this, finding a country without a central bank. But you know what? There might be a danger there, too, in that the local thugs may want a piece of the action, and depending on what percentage they want, and that they don't change their terms, could be a problem, too.
Thugs are going to want a piece of the action.
Yeah.
They always do.
The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything that is on your mind and join us here on Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Russia is claiming that it has taken control of the Ukrainian salt mining town of Soledar in the east of the country. It's part of a Russian military strategy to encircle the much larger city of Bakhmut. Ukraine says the battle for Soledar continues. On the Russian side, it's being waged by the Wagner group of mercenaries. Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell is a global defense consultant.
The Wagner group is led by a guy called Yevgeny Prigozhin, who's actually a convicted thief, but he has recruited a whole load of convicts and but he's got his own agenda. He's got a political agenda and a business agenda. So he was desperately keen to demonstrate success where the Russian army could not succeed.
Ukraine's defense minister claimed today that the country has become a de facto member of the NATO alliance. Those comments made in a BBC interview are sure to rankle the Kremlin. Manchester City footballer Benjamin Mendy was cleared today of 6 charges of rape. Court reporters say he was close to tears when the verdicts were returned. He will, however, face a retrial after the jury deadlocked on 2 additional counts that he denies. President Biden has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to the White House to celebrate a growing defense partnership between Washington and Tokyo.
These shared democratic values are the source of our strength, source of our alliance, and the source of our being able to deliver for all our people.
The 12th Artillery, currently stationed at Okinawa, are to be turned into a permanent US military presence there and provided with what the Pentagon describes as more agile and lethal weaponry in a bid to offer fresh resistance to China's expansionism. They've also agreed to deepen cooperation in space. Donald Trump's business empire was fined $1.6 million today by a judge in New York after being convicted of tax fraud. FSN's New York bureau chief, Will Denzelo.
They were slapped with the maximum punishment available by the judge at New York's State Supreme Court, which is a $1.6 million fine. We've heard from Manhattan's District Attorney Malvin Bragg, who says that corporations can't serve jail time, but this is a consequential conviction and serves as a reminder that corporations and executives that defraud tax authorities can't get away with it.
Broad tributes are being paid to singer-songwriter Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who died suddenly on Thursday at the age of 54 in Los Angeles. She suffered an apparent cardiac arrest just 2 days after attending the Golden Globes to celebrate success there by a new film about Elvis. She was also at the King's Graceland Mansion last Sunday, commemorating what would have been her father's 88th birthday. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show here. We got time for you at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can also check out our TikTok channel over at tiktok.freetalklive.com. Aria and Bonnie have been working on putting some stuff up there. It's not all the time. There's a lot of work to cut out stuff from the show. If you guys want to subscribe, though, feel free. While the channel still exists, they'll probably ban it at some point. But go to tiktok.freetalklive.com. It's Ian, Nobody, and Chris here in the studio tonight. And we're going to go straight to your calls and thoughts. Sarah is on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
So it was on the news that the West Side Homeless Shelter is being inspected by the Inspector General. I don't know who that is, but they're finding a fire code violation. They have mice, lice, and broken showers. And they say that non-ADA compliant. But, you know, I've called into the show.
Just to clarify, hold on, before you go on, Sarah, is this a government-run homeless shelter?
I think so. Hitting Home, they're the agency, but I have a feeling it's government run. It's definitely not private funding. No, it's run. The money is it's government run, and then
Yep, it sure is. I just looked it up here. The West Side Emergency Housing Center has a .gov website, so it is definitely a government operation. What's your takeaway from this, Sarah?
My takeaway is that I'm kind of perplexed at why did it take like how long, like years and years, 7 to 8 years before they finally had somebody go down there and inspect it. Because I was calling in about all kinds of, I mean, I caught.
Well, the reason is because government criminals don't care if other government criminals break the law. That's just to make that clear. But go ahead with your next thing.
Well, plus, even if there are people within the government that, you know, do care, they're not incentivized in the same way as regular people or charities are, for instance. So they don't have the same sense of urgency. It's like, well, we'll get to it when we get to it. Oh yeah, it's only been 5 years. Oh, we'll check it later. I mean, they just don't have any kind of incentive. They're not worried about getting donations, right? Like your typical charity has to be responsible for its donors' money. If it's not responsible, if it just pisses it away or whatever on stupid crap, then the donors can come in there and say, well, looks like you're not actually spending the money in the way we said you should spend the money, so you're not getting it this year. And then that agency is just going to go away because they can't get the support that they need. Whereas the government, whether it be federal or state or Albuquerque city government, they get paid anyway. It doesn't matter because they will steal your home from you if you don't pay the property taxes.
Yeah, there's something a lot of people probably don't know about the charities, but there's actually independent, like some sort of independent rating, like where their financials get rated, right? Like how well or how efficiently is a nonprofit doing? And
we only rate nonprofits.
Well, but the point that I'm making is that you actually do have an ability to put your money to better use by selecting a nonprofit, some sort of nonprofit.
That's why I donate to the local homeless shelter that's run privately here in Keene. Because they do good work, and if I decide they're not doing good work, I can pull my funding from them. But you don't get that option with West Side Emergency Housing Center. If they've got a bunch of rats running around and the bathrooms aren't working right and the lights aren't on, I mean, then it doesn't matter because you're still forced to pay for it. And your only option to complain is to just go down and say something to the city council and hope that they, crack a whip over these people. But it's been how many years? 7 or 8 years, you said?
I think so. I don't know when it got open. It was supposed to be temporary, but
of course it was.
That's why we have
There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
But the thing about it is that the homeless people don't want to stay there because it's so horrible.
Yeah.
They've been getting a lot of complaints, but they all ignore them because they're a bunch of homeless people. They're, like you said, they're staying there for free. They don't pay any money.
What's their
They
budget?
treat them like dirt.
What is the budget of this West Side Emergency Housing Center? How much money from taxpayers are they getting every single year?
I have no idea. I think just to bus them back and forth with 5-6 buses just to get them out there alone costs like $1 million a year. So I was I don't know. And then
I was going to say, I bet you it's millions of dollars, at least, that they're pouring into this.
How many beds do they have?
But I'm surprised that this has been going on for so long, and then we don't have a really strong homeless coalition. This is Albuquerque. I mean, this is what you expect out of New Mexico. I mean, it just. I'm not really amazed, but I mean, the thing is, this is the worst homeless shelter in the history of New Mexico, Albuquerque. And the thing about it is, I wish the Salvation Army would still have the homeless shelter like they used to have here. So all they have now in Salvation Army is when you come out of jail, and then they just have a home for the men.
Halfway
I was
house.
told that they're doing it just because they get money for each head finishing that program. I don't know how true that is. They get funding for it.
Well, the Salvation Army does a lot of private fundraising. Now, there's a lot of charities that if they get the chance to take government money, they will, because they don't, they're not principled or anything like that. And if the money's there, I can't blame them for taking it. They're just going to spend it on something. So you might as well, as long as the strings aren't too terrible, then I don't blame somebody for taking it. According to an article from KOB out in Albuquerque, it looks like the West Side got $587,000 out of a recent funding round, but it's not clear for how long that lasts. I'm not sure if that's part of the year or what. It's but they're getting plenty of money over there for this particular operation, and they can't even keep the rats out. They can't keep the lights on. It's pretty embarrassing, but that's government for you, Sarah. This is what you want these people to run healthcare?
Well, the thing is that they are going to build that Gateway Center, so they're going to have a better homeless shelter.
Why?
24 hours.
Why would you? This one's 24 hours. Why would you think that it's going to be better?
Well, I mean, because they have to, because so many people are paying attention. Look at all the people that are getting thrown out on the street because of the rent. They can't afford to live here. So then many of the mainstream people are being forced to be homeless. It's not like the degenerates of drug addicts and alcoholics. So then they have to provide a better homeless shelter.
No, what's going to happen is they're going to, if it's a brand new shelter, has it even been built yet?
It has been built. I don't know how far it's going to be open.
But is it new? Was it built brand new? Is it brand new, freshly built?
No, it was a former hospital.
Okay.
That got closed
Of course.
down.
Yeah. I was going to say, if it was brand new, then you'll have it'll have a look to it, right? Like it would be new, and people would know it's new, and ooh, here's our new homeless shelter. Everything looks great. And then it's going to deteriorate, and it's going to not be taken care of. And you find out what's wrong with the building. And I thank you for the call,
like
Sarah.
a Chinese rental.
I don't know if that's insulting to Chinese people, but what do you mean?
Well, the Chinese government is really at fault for this, but they've been building a lot of buildings in China.
Oh, with the lowest quality
just
stuff
collapsing.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah,
it's really scary. Sometimes.
The thing that seems to be the biggest problem, just in general with poverty is in government in general, is the lack of planning, financial planning, basic financial planning skills.
They don't have to.
Yeah, certainly the government doesn't, but the individuals who are in poverty, it's okay, you have a job and you're still doing poorly and you're not making any progress in advancing, and it's well, why is that? And then you start looking at things, things drug
addiction.
certainly drug addiction, but like I'm even thinking of like other things, like and some of these things are like, okay, you can't undo what you did, like if you had 3 kids or whatever, right? But there's other things, certainly, and certainly if you do the financial planning ahead of time, maybe you can help.
Unfortunately, they don't have ex post facto abortion.
But there's certainly other things, right? Like, do you really need to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, as an example, right? Maybe you can cut back to 2 packs and then have save up that money, and then all of a sudden you kind of move up in the world. But people just don't have they don't teach these skills in school.
They sure don't.
Well, then again, how much better would it be if the government was teaching money management skills?
Terrible.
They don't have
I'm sure
any.
it would be, but it's actually funny because I actually did have a class where they sort of that was kind of the idea. Like it was like I won't say it was a class for stupid people, but it wasn't. It was like I had to fill in a class in my schedule in order to finish graduating.
Home economics?
Nah, it was like some sort of class that was like taught very basic skills, like how to use a checkbook, that kind of thing. And oh my God, talk about like this stupid stuff. Like there wasn't really any kind of financial planning in there. It was just. But that was like what it should have been, right?
Well, they don't want you to be financially secure. They don't want you to be financially aware. They don't want you to have any financial intelligence because they want you to rely on them.
Yeah, I mean, let me just give you an example of how stupid this course was, right? They had us reading terms of service agreements, privacy policies on websites on the internet.
Why?
I still don't know, because I think the idea was to protect your privacy, right? Like it wasn't like how to use tools to protect your privacy, like maybe Tor or I don't know, like cookie blocking or something. No, it was to read the privacy policy of websites.
Let's go to the phones here. David is in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Man, I've only heard about 45 minutes of today's program, and there's like a dozen different things that I don't think that are being understood that I'd like to comment on. But let me.
All right, we'll pick one or two.
Yeah, I know, Ian. I know your routine. So I was just, you interrupted me when I was saying, so let me cut it down to 2, which are related actually. And it goes all the way back to the beginning of your program. And you're talking about how courts are like church. Let me tell you a couple of things that I do, and get good reception to it and bad reception, and both are worthwhile. So a judge named Sandra Engel here in New Mexico, she once threatened me to. Well, let me give her your exact quote. I said something to her in open court that needed her attention in her courtroom, meaning a dude was stalking me in the courtroom. And so I tried to bring it to her attention. And she basically told me to shut up. And then the exact quote is, as I was walking out the door after I told her, okay, I'll handle it myself. And I went down and got security and took care of the situation because the judge was such a dork, Sandra Engel, that she couldn't handle it. But she said to me, she said to the courtroom as I was walking out the door with my back to her, but I heard it, do you know what happened to the last person who did that? And so anyway, I went down, got security, handled the situation, and Sandra Engel is a dork. Now, the direct contrast to that, and the whole point of these two excerpts, for lack of the word that I'm looking for, is what the F can the average person do to? Oh, let me interject. The government that we have, as we know it, has got to go. Government employees, did you hear that? You've got to go unless you change your tune. So now, direct contrast to Sandra Engel, and the last time I tried to share this on Free Talk Live, Ian was not sitting in that day. Neither was Chris. Neither was nobody. Different crew. Okay. They weren't happy with me giving praise to a judge, but let me try it again. So in direct contrast, different experience with Victor Valdez in the Metropolitan Court. Oh, and by the way, I've done the same thing in federal court to a good.
What about Victor Valdez, though? Can you finish the thought?
Okay, so what COVID brought on the telephonic appearances, the Skype, the whatever. Right. And that made it easier to do this, but you can also do the exact same thing if you show up in court. It just makes it easier if it's electronic. And so I was sitting in Victor Valdez's courtroom, and I haven't done this in a while, but I would just drop in to Victor Valdez's courtroom, and I would sit in. And then I would notice things as a citizen that the judge wasn't necessarily noticing or aware of, and that other people in the courtroom that could say something were not speaking up. And so I would say, Judge, and the judge would respond to me, yes, who is that speaking? And I would identify myself. And then I would say, friend of the court, information that you might find helpful, if I may. And then he would grant me permission. And I would share what I noticed, which was always on point because I'm just that way. And he was appreciative of what I had to offer because it made his job easier and made things better for everybody involved, himself and everybody else in the courtroom, who, no matter who they were. And that's in direct contrast to the first example of Judge Sandra Engel. And the point is that individual citizens can and should interject, even in the two examples. Remember, in one example, the judge threatened to throw me in jail. In the second example, different court, the Metropolitan versus District, but the judge was appreciative of my input. And
I think in most cases they're going to not be appreciative, at least in the cases I've seen. Usually they don't want to get interrupted or whatever.
We don't care. F them. We don't care. Stand up anyway. Stand up. The whole reason we're in the situation.
Yeah, as long as you're willing to risk, as long as you're willing to risk a contempt charge, then go for it. If you got something to say.
I feel like this is certain things that have happened here in Keene, in New Hampshire in general over the years, and it doesn't usually go well.
It usually doesn't. Thank you for the call, David. Let's continue here. Is this Sahid?
Yeah.
You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey, what's on your mind?
All right.
So what's on my mind? I had a question for you guys, just a quick one. I was thinking just earlier today, I was working on a little crypto project, and I was thinking, why if you're, I heard that you guys are not able to use crypto right now because of bail conditions.
It's only me. I think nobody is free to use crypto, if I recall correctly, on your probation.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay, got you. So my question was, can you, I assume that you can't issue like tokens or NFTs or anything like that, can't touch those, right?
I'm not allowed to do anything in regards to purchasing, holding, exchanging, doing anything with cryptocurrency. Nobody, however, could create his own token or something.
I'm just thinking, is NFTs cryptocurrency?
Yes. Yeah, they are.
Got you. And so, that was because technically it's not like 100% proof of work kind of stuff. It's somebody's just issuing kind of like signed messages. And so one step behind or like a little bit more primitive than NFTs is like just signing messages, kind of like Dana Oracle type of thing. Can you do that?
No, anything that requires any kind of interaction with cryptocurrency related software or cryptocurrency wallet. No, I mean I could do PGP if that's what you're.
They could probably.
Because signing things, being an Oracle is just literally just signing with crypto keys. You know,
no, anything that has to do with a cryptocurrency key, I wouldn't be able to do.
Does it say like virtual currency?
Not cryptocurrency keys, just literally just like a public key. You know, public key, private key kind of thing. Since that's what cryptocurrency is kind of like built off of, but it's a little bit more primitive than that. It's just like that's how PGP, HTTPS works and everything. So oracles are kind of like separate from the blockchain, you know. And so that was kind of like my question because it can facilitate some stuff, but it's not exactly crypto itself, you know. And so I was just curious about that kind of like line of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I wouldn't want to do anything that could possibly be pushing the line, so to speak. Judges don't tend to appreciate that very much.
Start using stable coins, but not cryptocurrencies?
In my experience, I don't think they want to play those games. But Sahid, since you called in tonight, I know you've called before, and I think you've mentioned you are Muslim, correct?
Yeah.
We had a conversation earlier tonight, and I'm glad that you're here because I want to go back to that maybe you can weigh in on this. I was trying to address what nobody had said in regards to, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, nobody, so correct me if I misstate this. You were concerned that you believe that Muhammad was advocating people or his followers go and kill non-believers back in the day. Is that correct? Nobody?
Yeah, that basically during Muhammad's lifetime, Islam was being spread by the sword.
And as I understood the story, and please correct me on what your understanding is, Sahid, as an actual adherent to Islam, that Muhammad and his followers were the ones who were being pursued and killed, and they had to defend themselves, and that they were not going around and just forcibly converting people who didn't agree with them. What's your understanding of it?
Yeah, good question. So the time period of the early Islam is kind of like I'm not an expert at it, but there's basically two different time periods. There's a time of like the Prophet's lifetime, and then there's like shortly right afterwards.
We're talking about his lifetime. We're talking about his lifetime.
Exactly. So in his lifetime, it was mostly kind of domestic within Saudi Arabia area, and then it was after his lifetime, shortly after that, it spread to Persia, to Israel, Jerusalem, Byzantium, and whatnot. And so during his own lifetime, it was all persecution and defense for the most part. But then afterwards, it can get a little murky after that.
Okay. That was not how I understood it, so thanks for clarifying.
Well, there's a lot of propaganda out there, right? There's a lot of people that have an axe to grind against Islam that don't really tell you the whole truth about it. And so what you're saying is, Saeed, is after Muhammad died, then the people that sort of inherited that seat, I forget what the term is, was it Abu Bakr or something like that came after him?
Yeah, exactly. It was basically the old power structure for the most part. And they used the same kind of reasoning. Actually, that's actually a big, it's not even just the people who have axe to grind. It's actually a lot of the quote-unquote supporters who just don't have really the same types of principles,
right.
Which can get pretty lost pretty quickly.
Yeah, and one of the principles he had, and you can correct me on this one as well, was that if you're being attacked, you obviously have a right to defend yourself. This is what Muhammad taught, from my understanding. You have a right to defend yourself, but if the attacker turns and runs, you are not allowed to, under his rules at least, to pursue that attacker and continue to cause harm.
I am not 100%. It's because the text we're talking about is when you're talking about like war, where it's like persecution and killing. It's not exactly forgivable, like in that kind of sense. It's like an eye for an eye type of, and the victim can go ahead and forgive if they'd like to, but they can't exceed it, what was done to them type of thing. And so there's like the Quran kind of like explains all this in detail. A lot of people like to go ahead and pick one verse or another, but in its complete form is pretty. It's actually, it reminds me not reminds me. I mean, that's why I'm an anarchist for the most part. Because it talks about all these rules, but it doesn't mention anything about governments at all. In fact, governments are usually the ones that are the tyrants on the wrong side of that. But I do want to mention one thing is like there are certain people who are not allied, but are associated with like a power structure or a tyrant, and who don't want to fight you, but also don't want to go ahead and fight the tyrant, or their families, and the people who are actually working with the however you want to call it, the tyranny. You're supposed to go. It mentions in the Quran before, like literally, like a couple verses before the one that's repeated so often, like find them and kill them wherever you find them, type of thing. A couple verses right beforehand, it talks about how those people who don't lift a hand towards you, but who are not trying to fight you, but they're kind of like with the tyrant system. Then those people are like off limits, give them safe harbor. We're supposed to actually literally give them a safe place to kind of like, sanctuary, so that they don't have to do either.
Would you say that
and I think a lot of people fall in that kind of like category, to be honest.
Would you say that the people that are Muslims, that are seeking power, that are running the governments of the world, that are Muslim, are not following the Prophet's guidance?
Yeah. I mean, of course not. I doubt even. I wouldn't even call them. A lot of. I mean, it's between them and God whether or not they're a Muslim or not. But the Quran actually has a distinction between a Muslim and there's another word called mu'min. One is a believer and one is a Muslim. Or people like somebody submit. And so there's a distinction there, and not even a lot of Muslims go and explain that to non-Muslims.
Saeed, we are out of time tonight. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for the clarification from your perspective on this. I definitely appreciate hearing from you. And we will be back tomorrow. You can join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response